Monday, degenerate gamblers! What's going up, everybody? What's going on? What's going up? What's up and what's going on? Those two kind of fusion dance together there. That's how we ended up with that. How is everybody doing here on a Monday evening? It's fight week, baby. It's about damn time. I think I can speak for everybody in the MMA community when I say, thank goodness we have bettable UFC MMA action coming back to us this week. Those weeks off, they are good for the mental health. They're good for the brain. They're good for the family. You know, the wife doesn't quite get as angry at you after a good little week off, but damn, they just start to suck after a couple of days. Even like 1, 2, 3 days into the break week, and you're getting excited for the fights coming up on Saturday, and then you're like, like we all needed it. We all needed it, but it gets rough, and I'm happy to be back. What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for jumping in the chat early. We've got George. We've got MMA. Propaholic Sean V. Mushroom. What's up, buddy? Welcome back. We have got Addicted to Combat. My guy, Dream Evan L. I love Clint D. Baby. Mike Harvey. The usual suspects all piling on in here. There's Rips and Picks. What's up, everybody? Do me a favor, guys. Hammer the like button for our first event back here after the break week. I do have to apologize real quick. House cleaning. The damn camera. I don't know if I need a firmware update. Like, the thing has been working fine for weeks now. Log on today to do the show. And of course, it's like, can't access your camera. So my nice sexy camera, the one that's up there that you guys are used to, for whatever reason, is not working. And I had to go with the laptop camera. Quality's going to be just a little smidge down because of that. And unfortunately, I might wiggle if I kick the desk here every once in a while. So apologies. I'll get it figured out, and we'll get the good camera back for next week. Thankfully, we at least got the good mic working, so I sound sexy. Speaking of sexy, I have got a guest for y'all this week. One of the favorites. You know him from MMA Twitter. One of the best and analytical minds that we have in sports gambling today. Eloquently breaks down the fights. My guy, none other than Dan Tom himself. Dan, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
What's going on? Hopefully I didn't mute myself. No, I didn't. There we go. I'm off to an okay start, but yeah, I'm just happy to be here with you, man. And you whether it's on Twitter, whether it's your fine programming that you really spoil your audience. I hope you guys really appreciate what Clint does. It's awesome to be here, man. You're one of the few who can really like genuinely make me laugh, smile, and cheer me up in this space. So let's get it.
I appreciate that, Dan. I appreciate it, buddy. It's always good to have you on, and I hope everybody watching, the man himself said it, I do my best to spoil you guys. I'm a complete degenerate. I love MMA. I'm not the best gambler in the world, but I try to bring the best minds and best gamblers to you all so that you can use some of this information to make some cash. And Dan, I can't wait, man. Was this week off torturous for you as well, or was it good?
It's weird because I 1,000% actually sentiment with everything you said. It's great for the mental health. It's needed. We need more of them because for me, it's like opposite where I just they actually end up being my most stressful weeks. Not so much because I missed the MMA. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that, but because I try to cram so much in from like, you know how it is, Clint. I mean, you're a family guy. Whether you're a family guy, a homeowner, I know there's a lot of people that check the boxes, your audiences. You just got to get the stuff done, right? Real life comes a knocking. And so I just tried to get as much done as I could. Stress myself out a bit because I wanted to have like the whole card researched, ideally coming to you guys. But I do have some, some super square things I'm looking to play and some super dog and plus money things I'm looking to play. So at least I'm going to be able to give you guys something. As always, I'll give you what I got.
I like it. That's all we can ever ask for, my man. Thank you again so much for making the time to be here with us today. We definitely appreciate it. Hey, guys, no further ado needed. Let's dive right on in. We got a fun card to talk about. As always, the lines are presented to you by Superbook Sports, so make sure you check them out. Very solid lines, fair price setting, and all the good stuff that you guys come for and need when it comes to sports gambling. But you know what, guys? I forgot there's one other thing that I do have to tell you about here real quick, and that is the Pub Sports Radio Cappers Contest. If you guys haven't been to the overhauled, sexy Pub Sports Radio webpage, make sure you go check it out. You can see all the professional cappers here at Pub Sports Radio tweeting out their plays and their picks. You can see the the records and who's hot, who's not this week, stuff like that. But right here, this Sports Cappers Contest, it's a $100 entry fee. You're going to be able to make your picks and select. They've got the information right here for you. Basically, every single week, you're going to be competing against the personalities here at Pub Sports Radio, and it's got a big fat cash prize. They also are going to be running a Survivor contest. So for those of you like myself that don't just degen out on MMA, you do all the other sports. If you ever wanted to do like the super contest that actually Superbook Sports puts on in Vegas, they have a Pub Sports Radio is doing essentially a cheaper version of it with a $100 buy-in for football season. So, hey, everybody, make sure you jump over there and check all that good stuff out. Now let's get into the MMA. We've got Ailin Perez taking on Stephanie Egger, and Stephanie doing the quick turnaround thing, stepping up here essentially on short notice to fill in and keep this spot alive here, Dan. We all remember what happened with poor Stephanie just a couple weeks ago. You know, Mayra Bueno Silva, the phantom tap situation. It's interesting for her to be coming back in here so quickly. Almost seems like a rinse the bad taste out of my mouth type of situation. You take an L like that, nobody's really sure if she got caught or not. So she has an opportunity to jump back in here, and she's welcoming her opponents. And they are out of order on my notes here. Ailin Perez, who's 7-1, decent kicking game, strikes nice and long. She likes to use that body lock clinch to get the takedowns. She explodes. She can lift her opponents up and take them for rides, man. She likes to use trip takedowns. Honestly, strong positional top control. I like what I've seen from her when she gets on top of her opponent, and good ground and pound. The only issue I've got with her, Dan, is that she's fought absolutely nobody. This is another one of those prospects that has one of the most padded records I have ever seen. Her best win is over an 8-4 girl. Her only loss on her record was for an illegal knee disqualification. And let me tell you, man, I don't know what's going on with her, but she fouled this girl in the first round of that fight. And then in the third round, obviously, clearly downed opponent knees her square in the face. And then she screamed and lost it like my 6-year-old daughter throwing a tantrum when she was the one that fouled the other girl. I mean, it was like uncontrollable rage that she was the one that caused the foul and it cost her the win here. It was honestly a little sobering to see her react that way when the other girl was the one that got kneed in the face. But I have serious questions about Perez. I like everything that I see from her. I like the base that I see from her. She's got a good, workable, solid skill set, but she has never tasted adversity, Dan. Not a single second of her MMA career has been spent on the back foot. She's never been chin checked. She's never been taken down. She's never been put on her back. Like, I could not find a single fight where she didn't look like she had 15 pounds on the girl that she was taking on. She was a full weight class larger than some of these women. I wanted to come in here and talk about Perez being a legitimate challenge for Egger. I like the fact that Egger is someone who has seemed to be overvalued by the MMA community, and I want to take the opportunity to fade her at a big juicy plus number. But I can't do it here because what we've noticed with these women, especially someone like Egger, you know, her biggest tool is that judo throw, right? Like, I want anybody who can contend with her on the ground and then outstrike her on the feet. That's what I'm looking for when I want to fade Stephanie Egger. I'm not getting that here. Maybe Perez can outstrike her on the feet. I'm not confident in that. I don't think that's necessarily a good path to victory for her. Her path to victory is going to be the grappling. And these women go for a ride, Dan. When they go for the body lock against Stephanie Egger, you're on your back in about 0.2 seconds. So because of that, I mean, that one simple fact here, there's not a way I can look at this underdog here. I understand that Egger might be slightly overpriced at this point. I mean, we're looking at minus, let me find the number here, minus 290 on Superbook Sports. The comeback is plus 245 on Perez. But I can't dispute it. I have no interest in taking this underdog shot. It would be favored or pass for me here. What about you, Dan? What do you see in this first fight?
You know, I can't say that it's opposite for me, but off my initial view, it's opposite because I still got to dig into more Ailin Perez. The problem is, I think if you look at it like, okay, she's got the head kick knockout, she's got more TKOs and submissions. But if you look at, you know, and I haven't done the deep dive yet, but if you go through, you know, her Instagram and whatnot, or some of her fight highlights, or some of her, she's a BJJ purple belt as well. A lot of it takes place on the ground, right? And even though I was on the right side, I know it got confusing at the end. I guess I was on the right side with Mayra Bueno Silva, and I laid out multiple ways for her to win. I still ended up cashing that ticket. Now, I did throw a little hedge on Egger by sub. Now, Egger ended up being the one that got subbed because I think we forget how many times that even though the women's armbar is very powerful, since Ronda Rousey to these smaller, less overwhelming names like a Stephanie Egger, right? We see how powerful it is. It's also, you know, that's a two-way street. That's not just a two-way street, Clint. It's a potent two-way street, right? Not just for women because of the stereotype of armbar round one, WMMA, you know, bet the dog, bet them armbar round one. You're always going to get that. But even within the male divisions and the, you know, if you want to play that game and like, oh, it's, you know, the more talented divisions, you wouldn't see this. Well, on contrary, we've seen very technical divisions like 145 or whatever. Even the hot Conor McGregors of the world coming up. When you look at their little stumbles, what are they usually by? They're always by submission. And when you look at some of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu tape on Ailin, I'm probably terribly mispronouncing that. I apologize.
I'm sure it's closer than me.
She too likes the armbar, and I'm focusing on this. Maybe because I'm overcorrecting the steering wheel because I missed such an obvious possibility in road with my last call on Egger's fight, right? So I do want to say that, but by that same token, again, you look at the MMA fights, even though it's more TKO by submission, she's not afraid to go for the takedown because she's a very athletic girl. Now, to Clint's point, folks, she's not fighting like the top tier. And again, it's not just a WMMA thing. Like we've seen this even with guys like the Humberto Bandenais of the world coming from those South American leagues. They're still developing, right? It's just what they got to work with. So we can't overinflate them, but we can't hate on them either. We got to find that healthy balance here. So I'm going to go back, Clint, and I'm going to look for this with a finer comb because to me, I want to see if there's any value on the dog. I don't disagree that Egger was the favorite, but I agree with more of the opening minus 145 price. Now you're looking at over double. We see her getting used in parlay pieces. It could even, you know, inflate even more. Even if I pick her, I don't want any part of that price, even if I do end up on the favorite. That's just my initial feel.
I can completely understand that. And like you said, the armbar is always going to be something that's there and she specializes in. So you definitely don't want to get caught when we just watched her get caught in that exact armbar that we're talking about. Right. So definitely not something that I can hold against you or fault you for wanting to avoid. But yeah, man, the more I looked at it, I think Stephanie Egger is the better striker. I think now that she's got the higher level UFC caliber experience, we can count on her. And I really don't like it when I haven't seen somebody get pushed. You know what I mean? This girl may be the goods. She might be everything we could ever hope for. And you still can falter in an early fight because it's the first time anybody's ever pushed back against you. It's the first time anybody's ever hip tossed you. It's the first time you've ever been chin checked. Yeah, man, that's where I just can't get on the dog in this case. I got to see her walk through some adversity before I'm willing to put any money on her.
I hear you. I hear you, brother.
Well, that is the first fight of the night, folks. It's a big fireball and popcorn pass for me, but coming up next, we've got Khalid Taha taking on Cristian Quiñonez in a fight that I have seen very, very popular online. Dan, I don't know if you've seen it around, but it seems like there are some spicy opinions on this fight, and I can't wait to get into it here with you. Khalid Taha just kind of seems like, man, he's he's that guy. You know what I mean? Like Khalid Taha's 1-3-1 so far in the UFC. He's had a very, very rough run, but he's 13-4 overall. So like you make that argument of like, should he be here? Is he beating up bums on the regional scene? But I mean, you go back and you look at the guys he's fighting. I mean, Nadnir Amani, Hani Barcelos, Bruno Silva, Sergey Morozov, like these are not bad names. So he's fighting a good, solid caliber of competition. He's fought decently well with some of them. He had that submission win over Bruno Souza. He did pop for something. USADA caught him. He said it was for eye medication, something like that. Looking at the physicality of Khalid Taha, his eyes are in pretty good shape, I think, given what he must be on at this point. But nonetheless, Bruno is a guy that you do not beat unless you're UFC caliber. So yeah, maybe he was on a little something good, but at the same time, like they always say about John Jones, right? The steroids didn't sink in that choke. So he won fair and square over Bruno Souza, and that kind of gives him he deserves a little bit of additional respect in my assessment here, at least anyway. Dude is tough as nails. That's the biggest thing with Khalid Taha. He's not overly technical. He hits like a truck, and he has these chopping hard leg kicks, big, powerful hooks. He's a bit hittable, but damn, that durability just never fails him. He can get hit in the face with a brick, and it's never going to slow him down. His gas tank is fantastic also. That's something he's always going to be dangerous late in a fight when his opponents essentially get tired of punching his face. He will then be able to take over in fights because he just doesn't quit. Now, Cristian Quiñonez, 16-3, he's making his UFC debut coming off the Contender Series. And here we go, folks. Like, I know the Dana White Contender Series fade angle, it should be on the table, but it's not because he's the underdog. The Dana White Contender Series fade angle for me, specifically, the debuting fighter has to be the favorite over the UFC caliber competitor. So at this stage, it doesn't qualify because he's still the underdog. But I'm still tempted to go there because I'm not impressed by Cristian Quiñonez. I'll be honest. I see a lot of love for him in the market. A lot of people going to war with Quiñonez here in this spot. He's got flashy kicks, good movement, but he plays with his hands low. He'll throw these spinning heel kicks, and he's got a long jab, lots of stuff that you like to see. But Dan, he's been hurt in almost every single fight. He gets caught all the time. He's got 2 losses by knockout, 1 loss by sub. All 3 of his losses are by finish. 2 of those are in the 3rd round, and the other one was in the 2nd. He just can't keep up that pace. He starts to make mistakes. He starts to leave openings. And with his hands being down like that, it's just a matter of time before somebody catches him. Heck, on the Contender Series, the kid that he fought on there caught him bad. Long Zhao, I believe. He got caught badly in round 1, managed to survive and get through it, but I thought it was over early. Now, we've seen the Chinese prospects are really struggling to convert over to the UFC, so we got to take a little bit of a grain of salt there with that. Zhao did not get signed by the UFC. He lost that fight, but he still almost put this kid away on the Contender Series. I'm not convinced that he's all everything is making him out to be. I'm very tempted to take the stab here on Khalid Taha. Honestly, I'm tempted to take the shot on him by knockout, and I'm tempted for that round 3 sprinkle, Dan, because the longer this fight goes, I think the more opportunity he's going to have to land that bomb. It's one of those, Quiñonez probably wins this thing by decision if it gets there, but if it ends inside the distance, Taha more than likely is the one getting the finish. What do you think about this one?
Now you're talking my language, Clint.
There we go.
Again, this is one I still got to self-admittedly go a little bit further. I usually start from the top and work my way down.
See, I'm
in case you're wondering.
I go bottom up.
You can get some good value that way, though, because people forget about the prelims, and that's the thing. That's why, even though I don't prioritize it, and it gets really, it gets a lot harder. This one, I could have, again, if I would have done my tape study early, then I actually probably would have been researching this match because it was higher on the card when Taylor Lapalus was attached, right, folks? But then let's say I go and I get my tape study done early, and now I'm thrown off because either if I have a bet, I've got to deal with that kind of a letdown spot, right? And now re-research. Now, regardless of that, I'm still going to research a little bit of Taylor Lapalus because I want to see, Clint, if he was a southpaw like my memory has me remembering, because was Taha spending this whole camp getting ready for a southpaw? And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Quiñonez is orthodox because I just read my write-up on Quiñonez, and usually I'm good about pointing out if they are southpaws. I didn't make any notes that he was a southpaw, but a lot of my notes coincided with what Clint said, which was I think that his length and movement will serve him well at bantamweight. That is Quiñonez, right? He shows some really good things like inside of a scramble, which you as a prerequisite at bantamweight, you better know your way there. He showed some good looks from a double collar tie, which given Taha's stature, I hope he builds up on that. So there's plenty of seeds here for the Quiñonez side, whether you like him for this fight or you just want to see more of a fun action fighter in the future. I'm with you. I got love for the kid in that regard, but in my write-up, I wrote that he is really going to get taxed with the amount of volume that he puts out if he doesn't shore up his defense for that reason. And again, I gave him a B and not an A, and that's not to hate, on my Chinese brothers and sisters there, but you got to kind of grade the competition too. And when you factor the competition in, kind of like what Clint said, yeah, man, I mean, you're getting rocked by that regional talent and whatnot. I know it's Contender Series. Everybody's trying to impress. So you're going to give up a little bit more in that regard, but that was a bad sign. And in fact, I finished my grading the winners article saying, I hope they get, because of those reasons, Clint, I hope they give him a more grapple first fighter. Now, Khalid Taha's pretty well-rounded, more than he's got given credit for. He is not a grapple first fighter, though, I would argue. I would say I would think he's more of a well-rounded technician. He trains with some good grapplers, but it's that pop in his punch. It's that pop in his punch that you really got to watch out for. And I think it's going to be live, especially what Clint's saying in round 3, because this Quiñonez kid, he's having to take this fight last minute. He's having to travel. And when you talk about cutting large percentages of weight, bantamweight's right up there, man, especially those long bantamweights cutting a lot of weight. That is something to look out for, that round 3 angle, regardless of what side. I don't hate anything Clint's saying. I'm going to go a little bit deeper on these guys to refresh myself to make sure I'm not talking crazy here. But I'm more in line with Clint on this one.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. It always makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. I did look it up, and per the UFC stats site, they do have Quiñonez as an orthodox fighter. Don't believe he's got that southpaw that we're looking for there. And I mean, Khalid Taha to me is just one of these well-rounded, do-it-all type of guys. And the market, honestly, Dan, that's one of the most interesting things. Let me get this up here. I was gonna not talk about this, but it's interesting enough that I kind of want to.
Okay. Sure.
So give me just a real quick second. The market has no idea what to do with Khalid Taha. Let's look at his line history since he's been in the UFC, right? So against Nad Narimani, he's a plus 165 underdog, and then he's a plus 110 to Boston Salmon. Now, he wrecked Boston Salmon. So then he comes in as a minus 265 over Bruno Souza, gets the win, pops for steroids, plus 250 against Hani Barcelos. I mean, just massive swing from being a 2.5 to 1 favorite to being a 2.5 to 1 dog. He's favored over Sergey Morozov, a pick'em against Mario Bautista, and now here he is a slight favorite over Quiñonez. He was a gigantic dog to Taylor Lapalus. I think this is a big step down in competition for him. He I don't know, man. This is one of those spots where I think it's maybe a buy low spot on the UFC caliber guy. It's close to the Dana White Contender Series fade angle for me just because Cristian Quiñonez is getting ever so slightly closer to being a favorite in this spot. If people keep betting him, that line might flip. I'll cross my fingers and maybe hang in there for a even money or a plus odds or something like that on Taha. But yeah, man, I'm on the Taha side of things, and like I said, I'm going to be looking for those finish props because I do think that Quiñonez is a guy that leaves his chin out there just a little bit too often. I know you mentioned the Contender Series. It's all about the finishes. It's all about leaving yourself out there so you can kill your guy, but, have the chance to get killed yourself. I get that, but he always fights that way. If you go back to his regional footage, he fights like that every single time. It wasn't an outlier that he was on the Contender Series. That's just how this dude throws down. And I think he's way too hittable against somebody with way too much power and a good enough gas tank in Taha that I think he's eventually going to get clipped.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, that's just me. Not sure if I'm going to have a gigantic investment in it, obviously, but we'll see. I will look into that one, and I'm going to be patient on that line and end up just checking out where it goes. I just want to see how far down it's going to go for
Same here. Interesting movement. I'm glad you noted that.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me, man, is that I looked at this and I went Khalid Taha minus 140. I might jump in on that. And then I saw 135. Now I'm seeing 130s. And I'm just like, okay, the market is just chugging their way on this new Contender Series, kid. I'll sit tight. You give me minus 110. You give me plus 105. Now we're talking. I'll just sit tight. I'll be patient. Let's see how far down this thing goes. All right, moving right along, everybody. Next fight of the evening, we have got Benoit Saint-Denis taking on Gabriel Miranda. And most of you should know at this point, man, I love Benoit Saint-Denis. They call this man the God of War for a reason. When I looked him up, Dan, I saw stars. I was like, I love this guy. I love everything about him. He's a wild man. He's a member of the Special Forces before he got into MMA. He's got that grapple-heavy game plan. He's just physically freaking strong. And then he gets his ass beat within an inch of his life against Elizeu dos Santos. Now, I knew better than to get too heavily invested in that spot for the debut, but I knew we were going to get some good price tags on him moving forward from there. I knew we were going to get some opportunities to back him after that point. And here we are. Now he's at kind of a more playable price tag. He's a minus 265 favorite, plus 225 to come back on his opponent, UFC newcomer, Gabriel Miranda. Bear in mind, something you guys probably need to remember for this fight card is that we are making the UFC's debut in Paris, right? The sport was outlawed in this country until not long ago. So there's going to be a lot of talent from the general vicinity that they're going to be looking to prop up here on this card. And I think, honestly, this is one of those fights where they're making a case for a guy that is, from the area-ish. Benoit Saint-Denis 9-1, his only loss coming to Elizeu dos Santos, 100% finish rate in his wins. He is nasty with those submissions, man. He pins you up against the cage, uses that wrestling, dangerous with those opportunistic submissions, and he's got positional care when he's in top position, man. He just blankets people, does not let you move, does not let you get up, transitions to the back, looks for chokes, tight squeeze on this guy. And his opponent, Gabriel Miranda, he trains at MMA Masters. He's a BJJ black belt, so you can't really count him out in the grappling. But what I really noticed from him is that he jumps guard. This guy does he's a Paul Craig. Like, he does everything he can to get the fight to the mat. He will jump guard. He'll grab your arm. He'll jump on your back. He'll climb you like a tree. Like, he does anything possible to get this fight to the floor. But he is really lacking on the feet. He walks forward with his hands low. He swings from the hip. He's incredibly hittable. He's got a tight squeeze on him. And I did notice Benoit Saint-Denis, he leaves his neck out there, man. When he goes for takedowns, he absolutely sticks his neck on, right where your opponent can snatch a guillotine. But he's so good with the submission defense, it just never seems to be a problem for him. It's one of those spots where you kind of go, somebody's going to get him with that eventually if he keeps sticking his neck out there. So is this the spot? Will Miranda jump the gilly and catch my guy Saint-Denis? Otherwise, I think it sets up pretty perfectly two grapplers, one who likes playing off of his back, or at least is willing to go to his back. The other, a guy who wants to be on top and beat your face in until you turn over and give your neck up. I think this has been Benoit Saint-Denis' fight to lose. I think it's set up pretty perfectly for him to get the win. And that guillotine is really the only thing concerning me. Kicking it over to you, Dan. Is this one that you've taken any interest in?
Yeah, I agree with a large amount of what you said. This is kind of real clear cut to me. You either bet or hedge with Gabe Silva round one submission. Once it gets out of round one, the guy is clearly in trouble. It worries me, even though not just of a gas tank and do or die styling, but you see a TKO loss to Wagner Rocha. I don't know if people are familiar with him, but that guy's a grappler. That guy's a small BJJ guy, not known for his TKOs. So this could easily be a Saint-Denis either decision or TKO as far as his methods. If you're looking to get if you're looking to kind of narrow down here, and not just because of, that of the other guy, really, it's the only way to go about it. Saint-Denis got he's a good grappler. He's got a good mind for, tactical work. Obviously, he's a special forces guy. So he's going to, hopefully he's going to cue into some of that mindset here and see the easy answer, which is, okay, use my specialty on defense rather than offense here, and I should be okay. Gabe Silva's having to fly across for his UFC debut. You're going to have the big crowd, all of that deal. I know he trains with a big camp, but he hasn't had a UFC fight camp yet. And MMA Masters, even though I do like to try to give them some love where it's due credit, at the end of the day, they're not the most best camp for game planning, the best camp for developing fighters beyond their strengths. You got a Capoeira guy who's mainly got trying to attach outside kicks. So you never really you kind of have a disjointed game of as far as your grapplers and strikers there, because you've got a Capoeira guy who likes to play on the outside and your jiu-jitsu and your MMA grappling is a judo guy who likes to clinch. So your two head coaches are like, and again, I'm not trained there, so I'm talking out of my ass, folks. I just, again, from knowing the stuff that they put out there to the results, this is what I'm judging by. I've not trained there, but from what I'm judging by, you don't really see any of those new skills. It's usually, it's the submission skills that Cesar Ferreira had before he came to that camp that was winning those fights. It's Nate Landwehr's dog, DAWG, that he always had in him since the Russian days that won him that last fight against Onama, right? Yeah. And I'm not trying to overly downplay by saying that, but I mean, you could really like look to a lot of the traits as far as fighters from that camp when they've won. It's been doing stuff that's kind of in their wheelhouse. So if Gabe Silva wins, it's going to be by round 1 sub. Otherwise, you want to look for angles as far as Saint-Denis after that. Maybe even live betting, because Saint-Denis is probably going to get some like, even if he can't get the fight down, Silva's got leg locks. So he's probably got some drop downs, some pull guards, like Clint was saying, right? So there's going to be points where Saint-Denis caught in a sub. And even though we know he's okay and he survives the round and maybe even still wins the round, Saint-Denis, you're probably still going to get like a better live price. I know Clint's been killing it with some live bets lately, but that's what I would say.
Thank you for mentioning that, Dan. I did forget to say that off the top of the show. I am actually coming off a win. Shockingly, I know for everybody in the chat right now, didn't touch the Contender Series last week pre-flop, but I hit 2 fantastic live bets. I got plus 255 and then I got plus 310 on another one. I actually am not, for the sake of my like podcast record, I'm not going to be tracking that 255 one. I was so sad. I was like halfway done with typing the live bet tweet and it dropped to like plus 100 right afterwards. So that's one of those things where like, I don't feel comfortable crediting myself on my public record when nobody can get the number that I got, just kind of the way I do things. I should have just taken the even money and given myself credit for that, because that was plenty going into the 3rd round of that fight. But I did tweet out the plus 310 live bet and people had time to jump in on that. So
nice.
I'm going to go ahead and take it. But yeah, man, thank you. It feels good. I like Saint-Denis here. I think he's the only problem is I really don't want to parlay him. I don't want to parlay him because of the threat of that guillotine. That's the one thing that I'm fearful of here in this spot. I think we could get an ugly striker versus striker type of fight where neither guy wants to go to the ground. But I just, sometimes that happens, right? You get 2 primary grapplers and they don't want to play with each other on the mat because of the respect, because they neutralize each other. Because this one doesn't set up that way to me. Because Saint-Denis is so offensive wrestling minded and his opponent is so willing to go to the ground. I don't even know if he can stuff a takedown because he always jumps on a neck. I don't think this plays out that way just because one guy wants to be on top and the other guy wants to be on bottom. They're going to go there. They're going to go there almost right away. I think this is going to be a grappler's grappling match. So yeah, man, I think it's Saint-Denis by however he wants. If he wants to posture up and rain down punishment, I think he can. If he wants to force this guy to roll, I think he can probably grab something, a neck and arm triangle, something. He's just so freaking strong. It'll be one of those muscle chokes. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a fancy submission. It'll be one of those ones where he just kind of mauls his guy and then takes whatever he wants when he's done with him, or he'll just grind his way to a decision. So I would be tempted to see what that TKO number looks like. I would be tempted on the inside the distance because with his opponent being a black belt, I could see him getting knocked out maybe a little bit more than seeing him getting submitted. But I also don't want to doubt my guy Saint-Denis in being able to grab something. And I also would be a little worried about him just mauling his guy all the way through to the decision line. So, kind of lay the chalk, maybe parlay him. I'm not sure what I want to do here, but I think in some way, shape, or form, I want a piece of Saint-Denis.
Yeah, and if anybody is going to take a piece or they're going to actually take that step in parlay, that's why I mentioned you might also want to think about that round 1 sub for Silva for some type of hedge for the exposure, because so especially when you have a guy in a method where you can narrow it down so heavily, you got to try to use that even if you're not necessarily picking him.
Good call. I like it. Hey, we real quick though, we got to shout out the chat. My guy, Anthony Cabrera, saying usually like to make it live, but I was leaving class. Your boy graduated law school. Anthony, that is what's up. Congrats, man, on graduating. That is fantastic. We will look forward to having you in the chat on Mondays from now on, but big time congrats. That's a massive achievement, man. Very,
That's
very happy
huge.
to hear. That's awesome. All right, everybody, give our guy Anthony some congrats. We will move on. The next fight we want to talk about is Nassourdine Imavov taking on Joaquin Buckley. And I love this fight, Dan. I absolutely love this fight. So Nassourdine Imavov is one of those guys that I saw him coming a mile away as a fighter that I really wanted to be in on. I saw him as a guy with all the talent, all the skills, the background. He's got the wrestling base, but he's got the power. He likes to strike. He's got the gas tank. Like, I loved Nassourdine Imavov. And then he lost to Phil Hawes. And I immediately went, fuck that guy. I'm like the most notorious Phil Hawes hater. I don't really like the guy, the skill set he brings. I think we can expose him. Nassourdine was supposed to be the guy that got it done for me, Dan. I had the round 3 sprinkle. I was heavily invested. We had a good number. I was like, this is going to be it. Everyone's way too high on Phil Hawes. And then Hawes grinds this guy against the fence for 15 minutes. It was awful. Since then, Nassourdine Imavov has made some changes. He's moved up in the world. Now he's training at MMA Factory Paris. His gas tank is better. His wrestling is better. He's coming off of a couple of big back-to-back wins. I mean, he looks exactly like the guy that I initially thought he was going to be. And since the Phil Hawes loss, I mean, he finished a guy in Ian Heinisch that's incredibly tough to put away. You can't read too much into the Shabazian win because Shabazian came out and thought he was going to prove a point wrestling with this man. We all know the gas tank issue. That wasn't going to happen. But Imavov is loose. He is long. He is fast. He flows effortlessly from his striking to his grappling, something you love to see. And he's got that Russian wrestling in the back of his pocket, man, that it's like if everything's going badly for him on the feet, he could just take you down. It's not a problem. He's got a nasty jab on him that he developed. You really saw that in the Heinisch fight. And then you look at Buckley. We saw the evolution of Buckley in his last fight, right? D1 Buckley showing up here with some wrestling chops on him. This guy is also showing that he's improving and belongs in the UFC, and he's got some room to go up from what we thought was, I don't know, maybe a short ceiling. Like, we didn't think he was going to have too much, and he's proven everybody wrong. He's getting better every time we see him out there. Coming off that big win over Duraev. Duraev really sold Buckley short, came in there overconfident, thinking he was going to walk through his old training partner and pretty much showed the ropes. But you know what, Dan? You could see that fight starting to shift a little bit in the second round. That fight got stopped, doctor stoppage, the swelling on the face, that kind of thing. But Duraev started to have a little bit more success there in that second round. Now, Buckley dug deep. He showed that he had a better gas tank than we expected him to. He was able to reverse the position, get back up to his feet, but he still was slowing down there in that second round. It still was the old Buckley that you're like, oh, okay, like maybe Duraev's going to turn the tables on him here. And then the fight got called. So I'm not ready to buy in all the way on D1 Buckley. Now, you've got to respect his explosiveness. You've got to respect his speed and his power. But the fact is, he's going to be 4 inches shorter than Nassourdine Imavov. He'll still have a 1-inch reach advantage here in this spot somehow. Are we counting on the improvements that Buckley is making, or are we going back to the well and saying that Nassourdine Imavov is the dude and we really should just be loading up on him? I think this is another favor to pass situation here for me, Dan. Personally, I can understand anybody that wants to ride with Buckley and bank on the fact that he's got that chip on his shoulder and he's showing those improvements. But I think that Nassourdine Imavov is a better version of what we thought Duraev was. I think this guy can outstrike Buckley on the feet, technically speaking. And if it goes poorly for him, I think he'll be able to out-wrestle him on the ground. So I lean with the favorite here in this spot, but I also am not running to the window just because Buckley's got those nukes. We've seen it before. Minus 255, plus 215, the dog. Talk to me here, Dan. Is this one of your crazy spots, or are we lining up here on the favorite?
This is tough because my initial is I'm lining with you on the favorite, but something you mentioned earlier, Clint, is the line movement, right? Now it's scaring me in this spot. The other spot, it was kind of inviting to both of us, I believe, with the Taha fight and Quiñonez. We were talking about that line movement. This is scaring me. It opened roughly in the neighborhood of the right spot with Imavov the favorite. I don't disagree with any of that. But seeing him climb and maybe even become a parlay piece worries me because I feel like this keeps happening with Buckley. We all keep discounting him at these numbers, and he keeps coming through. And now you mentioned the potential turning points, and you could really pick apart that Duraev fight. You could pick apart the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, maybe a couple different decisions from Abdul Razak here or there, and maybe we see a different fight. That being said, the wild card in both of those and the trend recently is D1 Buckley wrestling. But is that wrestling getting him tired, right? Is he getting tired? Oh, wait, he's fighting someone with a gas tank now, right? Or at least somewhat of a gas tank. Not that Imavov can't get in wars and get fatigued in heavy wars himself when it calls for it, but I'm saying he's fighting somebody who's not like destined to gas as opposed to like his last arguably 2 or 3 opponents. But let's hold that thought. Let's audit that thought. Why don't we while we're here, Clint? Buckley's won more decisions than he's lost. He's only lost 1 decision. I know some of those knockouts that he's lost, one of them came in round 3, I believe the most recent one off the top of my head. But these are a lot of the times from overstepping and stepping deep into that long stance that Buckley has. It's costed him at least 2 of his knockouts in the UFC where he steps deep. He's too deep into his stance. And if you've got like a power round kick or a power kind of a checking hook sort of deal, you can kind of catch him. So when I go back and refresh myself with some of Imavov stuff, because we haven't seen him since November. I know he was scheduled to face Kelvin Gastelum earlier this year, but we haven't seen him in combat since November. So when just a peek into my process, folks, when I go back and look at Imavov here, as far as a potential bet or to stay away making that decision, I'm going to be looking for those strikes. Does he have those heavy checking strikes? Does he have those heavy kicking strikes that Buckley's kind of struggled with before? Because if he doesn't, and if he's going to give him a jab to time off of, and, if he's going to grapple and Buckley can kind of grapple, maybe we just get a dogfight here. This fight, I was originally looking at Imavov, Clint, and perhaps maybe getting cheeky, looking at like an under, right? But I'm less confident in the totals more that I look at this fight, and B, at least from the early listing, maybe you guys are getting something different. I'm getting something old on my screen, but it looks like they're going to cut this fight at 1.5, which I don't like. If you are even going to, yes, I don't like it at all. If you are even going to attempt to go to Total Town, which is dangerous as is on a fight like this, you want that 2.5 cutoff. That seems more appropriate for this kind of fight. So for me, honestly, it's either Imavov decision maybe or pass. I want to look at what that Imavov decision line looks like. The only reason why I was looking at unders was because, of course, that covers for a Buckley upset. But, man, this could just be ugly with Buckley's wrestling trends that Clint was reminding us of there. So I'm going to look more into the arsenal of Imavov. But, yes, right now, maybe not as confident. But I'm with Clint here. I like Imavov. But I'm going to be looking more toward the decision than any kind of parlay or straight play or any kind of big exposure. I'm going to see what kind of a number they put on the decision and make my decision there.
I'm with you there, Dan. I agree with you on a lot of those points. And from what I remember running the tape on Imavov, he does have some of that crispy striking. I mean, like I said, he does like to time in those flying knees and stuff like that. And honestly, with Buckley's wrestling, that's the kind of thing that lets me think he might be able to shut those lights off, that if he shoots in for an untimely double leg, or, Buckley's always loading up for the big power shots and stuff like that. Imavov is so crisp. He's so snappy. Like that's exactly what I'm looking for here. Buckley could pull off the upset. Don't get me wrong. I just think that Imavov has him outclassed essentially everywhere. So it's just a matter of, does the dog have his day? Does the dog bark? Dan, one of the things I like to make the reference to is like other sports in baseball. If it's 6-0, bottom of the 9th, and you crush that ball, it's a home run. It's gone. It's still just 6-1. Your team is still going to lose. In MMA, when you hit that home run, you get your hand raised. You're the winner. You knocked your dude out. And that's Buckley. That's what he does, right? He comes in and he just swings hammers until he's out of gas. Imavov is not a guy that I think is going to slow down. Imavov is a guy that I think can flow and outstrike him. Imavov is a guy that I think can out wrestle him. Yeah, it's favored or pass for me. And I think a lot of people are going to buy into Buckley, especially coming off the win that he just had. And I was fading him in his last fight. I thought Duraev was going to be the guy who could out wrestle him and out maul him, that kind of thing. But it's another one of those sketchy contender guys where we're not really quite sure how good they are till they make it to the big show. And he came in with a big head, underestimating Buckley. Imavov's not doing that. I think Imavov's going to come in here focused, ready to kill. And with the experience he's already gotten under his belt, I think this is a spot where he potentially could show out.
Great. Yeah, great points there. And I guess the one thing I guess I'll add with that Buckley spot, as far as like that Duraev, you're right. He was not borderline. I mean, he was being disrespectful to Buckley's chances. So I guess
looked past him.
I don't want to make that Duraev mistake, but Yeah, as far as I can tell, Imavov, if he plays his cards right, he could outclass him en route to that decision that it sounds like is the most probable outcome according to me and you.
Yeah, kind of feels that way. All right, everybody, we are trucking right along here on UFC Paris. Do me a favor, hit that like button for us. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back to break down the rest of this card for you. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA Podcast, everybody. I'm joined by our guy, Dan Tom, breaking down UFC Paris right here on Pub Sports Radio. Hit the like button, hang out, have a good time. Let's find a way to make some cash on Saturday. Next fight we want to talk to you about, Ziam welcoming UFC newcomer Michael Figlak. And this is one of those fights, man, Dan. We've got a guy who's coming in with all the hype. You've got undefeated 8-0 Michael Figlak coming from Cage Warriors, a promotion that has really done quite well in the UFC, fed some of the biggest names we've heard of, making his debut against a less than hype prospect in Ziam. You know, Ziam 12-4, very risk-adverse kickboxer, right? Likes to stay long, sharp jab, decent offensive wrestling, but he really struggles with the ground game. That's kind of been his thing in the UFC so far, is his grappling needs to catch up to his striking. Dude's a decision machine. He is very, very responsible defensively speaking, and offensively doesn't always put his foot on the gas because he wants to make sure he doesn't get tagged. And now, don't get me wrong, that's probably the right way to fight, but he's more of a decision than anything, not really much of a finishing threat. He has a 64% striking defense. It is tough to get this guy if he does not want to be hit. Michael Figlak, this guy's got running back thighs. That's the first thing I noticed. He reminds me of Devin Clark, where he's just got these massive monster watermelon thighs here. Lots of kicks. He is super aggressive, tight boxing. He's got great conditioning. He never stops coming forward. One thing I noticed is that all of his takedowns that he hits are from the body lock, Dan. It's like a trip takedown that he likes to use, or he'll spin you to the ground. Like, everything is off that body lock. No singles, no doubles. If you're not on the body lock, he's not getting you to the ground. Once he does get you there, though, aggressive ground and pound. He's got very strong top control, and he's got a long amateur career. That was something that I noted. He took a very, very long time making his way to the pro circuit, so he's got more experience than it lets on at this 8-0. The only thing I worry about, Dan, is this price tag. Anytime you've got a UFC debutant that rolls over and they're a big favorite over an established fighter, I always kind of scratch my head and take a second look at it to see if that's accurate. Michael Figlak is a -185 favorite over Ziam, +165. And I'll be honest with you, Dan, as long as this fight plays on the feet, I favor Ziam. I think he is slicker. He knows to use his range longer. I think he's got a slight speed advantage. You've got the explosivity. You've got the power maybe going to Figlak. But I think Firaz knows how to handle that. We've seen it before that he just knows how to move around guys like that. The key here is the grappling. Ziam has shown that he's got a hard time getting off of his back if he gets put on the ground. And I can see Michael Figlak dragging him to the ground and essentially taking an entire round out of this fight from that top control position. But I mentioned the body lock. Ziam's takedown defense is getting better. And if you're not going to hit him with anything he hasn't seen before, if you're not going to get him with some tricky takedown, if the only offense you've got is a body lock trip, I think Ziam has a chance to keep this thing standing. I'm kind of leaning with the dog on this one. Figlak is a guy who I think has the goods. I don't really want to get in front of him, but at the same time, I think Ziam might be able to outclass him if he can't get him to the floor. So what do you think about this one, Dan? Are you doing anything here?
This is tough. I'm still honestly looking up Figlak here. I know that he's gotten beaten by better grapplers on the amateur scene, not just because he's got like a rear naked choke loss, also a decision loss to Jack Shore. This kid is built. I have seen him fight before over in the regionals, and here's the dangerous thing. He comes from Cage Warriors, but this is a Polish guy, and a lot of the Europeans can surprise us with their grappling, that they, we think, oh, European strikers are not caught up with the grappling, but you'll get like all these grappling specialists. But a lot of them from the Cage Warriors, whether you have, and we'll see this with obviously Patty is the one right now everyone's looking at, but like we've seen it with like even like less popular guys. Like what is the guy that who Jared Gordon beat over in Abu Dhabi? He was an ex-Cage Warriors lightweight champion, the champion of the division that Figlak comes from. And it was, what was that? Sorry, I'm going to drive everybody's crazy. They're probably saying it in the chat right now.
I do the same thing. It drives me nuts when I do that.
I apologize. Yeah, Chris Fishgold. And we see this a lot, like with a lot of like, those Cage Warriors scene grapplers. And Cage Warriors, by the way, great organization, fantastic commentary, talent, you name it. So not hating at all, but we've seen a lot of grapplers come from there, and they do really well until they hit that UFC level opposition. Kind of a similar setup that Clint was kind of just teasing whenever you see these numbers here, right? So when you see the number as far as like, yeah, the unproven guy is a favorite, I always going to take a double look. That's why I'm not going to have a strong opinion here till I finish my tape study on Figlak. But yeah, he's 190 now. What did he open as? Minus 110. Okay, see, it opened as more of a pick'em. So Clint, your eyes probably
that makes more sense to me
for thinking that he's not the crazier striker. But again, what are we seeing? We're seeing the hype. For Ziam, obviously not a lot to write home about, but he has made improvements. He did a stint at Sanford a while ago. Perhaps those kind of lend to some of the improvements that Clint was talking about, that, win or lose, you got to kind of be objective, right? Are they actually improving at the end of the day, even in their traditional weaknesses? And I agree with Clint. We did see some of those improvements there. And then if you look further and more relevantly, like see what he's up to in his Instagram, for example, you'll see that the guy's, I don't know if he recently got his purple belt, but it looks like he's been competing a lot. And again, that doesn't mean everything, right? But the fact that you're getting out there as a UFC fighter, there's going to be a target on your back and you're still going to get out there and work your grappling, that's huge too. Again, I'm going to have to look closer to this. I don't want to waste your guys' time on this one with a fight that I didn't research that deep. But my suspicions are I am definitely going to be looking into this fight because of the line and the reasons you stated, Clint. I'm going to be looking at the dog more specifically.
I hear you. Yeah, it looks like he got his brown belt. He has been doing some competitive stuff here in the jiu-jitsu scene. It looks like I'm scoping out the Instagram right now while you're telling me about that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell because he's on the podium with a brown belt there, so maybe he got that recently, So
what's really interesting to me though is that it was how long ago that he was favored over Terrence McKinney? You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
he was a pick'em. He was a pick'em with Terrence freaking McKinney. Like, you know how much hype was on Terrence? And deserving hype is on Terrence.
Sure.
And we thought this man was a pick'em price tag against Terrence freaking McKinney. Now, I know Terrence is a monster on the feet. People forget how good of a wrestler he is. I don't know that Figlak is. Actually, I know for a fact Figlak is not as good of a wrestler as Terrence McKinney is. It does concern me that Ziam doesn't have an answer off of his back. Figlak could put him down, like I said, and just chip a full round away, just gone, because Ziam is not able to get back up to his feet. But if he doesn't get that takedown, this fight is extremely interesting on the feet to me. And I know everybody loves their undefeated fighters. This one, as opposed to the ones I've been talking about in the past, Dan, this one's a dogger pass for me.
Yeah, from a betting perspective, absolutely. Even if I end up picking the favorite, if my studies lead me there, it's going to be hard for me to imagine a world where I see so much that makes me confident, he's going to go in there and roll as a favorite over a proven UFC guy who's been, training in proven camps. Again, not hating on my European brothers and sisters over there. There's some really talented grapplers. But if you make your name as a talented grappler in a scene that stereotypically is not known for their grappling, I'm going to squint my eyes a little bit. I'm going to squint my, kind of like a heavyweight fight with a big line attached. I'm going to squint my eyes a little bit. It's nothing personal. I'm just going to squint at that.
You just got to take a look. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. All right, everybody, we got 191 live viewers. Thank you all for hanging out here with us on a Monday night. Everybody, make sure if you use any of our affiliate links, if you need a new book, we've got my bookie. If you need prize picks, you use promo code PubSports for everything. That's what we've got there on everything. And everybody, make sure you use promo code Die Hard if you want to check out any of the things going on with Spectation Sports. That's where I'm helping them with the line setting for the regional scene MMA, and something that's going to help us out moving forward, watching these regional shows where we get to, pre-dive into these fighters that are going to be fighting before they get a chance to get on the Dana White Contender Series and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you check out Spectation Sports, promo code Die Hard for a discount over there. Next fight we want to talk about here is going to be Dustin Stoltzfus taking on Abusupiyan Magomedov. And Dan, my man, Dustin Stoltzfus finally got that UFC win. It felt so good to cash that ticket. It felt so good to cash the ticket because I knew Dustin Stoltzfus had the goods, Dan. I knew he was good enough to be here. I knew he was a big enough monster to compete with some of these guys, and he was this close to getting a couple of big names on his record, made a slip up in the third round, something young fighters will do, but he put a full game together and he got the damn thing done, and he cashed that underdog ticket for us. I could not be happier. And now they're going to kill him. They're immediately flipping Dustin Stoltzfus after he finally got that job-saving win over Grant to make somebody else look good. Quick shout out, my guy CT710, saying listens every week. First time in the live chat. Thank you for joining us live on the pod today, my guy. Appreciate you. Or girl, can't tell by the CT. So thank you, whoever you are, for hanging out with us live on the show. Always love that. So what we've got here is Magomedov, the dreaded Ov. He's coming to us from PFL and KSW. He's only 31 years old, making his UFC debut. I'll be honest with you, Dan, I didn't think he was that hot of a prospect. Didn't think that much of him. If you're in the early days of the PFL, season 1, season 2, when they didn't have any talent over there, you can't really count those wins for much of anything, right? And then you go back and you run the tape, though. He dominated people on his run in the PFL. He picks people up and he throws them across the cage. I mean, Romanov style. Like, this guy is strong and he's tall and he's long. He hurts people. Big swinging punches. Lots of pop on the end of those things. He's really good at catching you at the very end of those punches where they do the most damage. They sting the most. He targets the body. That's something I love to see, Dan. He drains people's durability, their gas tank, their will to live by attacking the body. And he just got caught. Like, he fought Jourdain, a guy who's still working it over in the PFL and showing some really good things these days. He gave up a reversal. I listened to this whole thing on his past, and apparently, like, he is your classic Ov, right? Grew up in Russia. He was born in Dagestan, but at 15 years old, they moved him out to Germany. So you got to take a little bit of a grain of salt there that he did the Dagestani thing until 15. Then he started striking. So, like, while he's got some wrestling in his back pocket, he's not your classic Dagestani wrestler who can just chain for, a 45-minute fight, because he didn't actually do that when he got older. He started striking. His striking is nasty. He's more of a Zabit than he is a Khabib, right? So he gets a chance to take that $1 million shot in the PFL and gets absolutely deaded in one punch. Disappears, goes back to the regional scene, fights a guy who's 43 years old, making his pro debut after going like 1-2 in boxing, kills this poor guy who is now like on I think like a 12-fight losing skid or something. Not an impressive win, but like, talk about a gimme fight, a get back on track, get your confidence right type of fight for this guy. But then he puts a couple of wins together in the PFL. And honestly, Dan, I like everything that I see from him. The teep kick, the way he targets the body, the way he mixes the grappling. I think Dustin Stoltzfus is a dead man walking, and I'm sorry. Like, I want to go to war with Dustin again. I want to tell everybody, look, dog, take your shot. We're going to go to the bank with this man. Everyone's going to continue to underestimate my guy, Dustin. I can't do it. Magomedov is a minus 255 favorite. Dustin is a plus 215. We saw Dustin make some really poor choices in the Grant fight, Dan. I mean, just really bad fight IQ from him, standing with a guy looking to trade with a dude that's got bigger power than him, a guy who is coming up a weight class. We talked about the transition. Dustin still got clocked a couple times by Dwight Grant, and we weren't sure the power was going to translate up a class. Magomedov's power is going to translate. Magomedov's power is real, and it's there. I'm going to look for a KO prop, Dan. I think everyone's going to expect the wrestling. We know Dustin wants to grapple in this spot. We know Dustin is extremely durable. He is dangerous when he's in top position. He's got good ground and pound, active looking for his subs. But I think he's taking on a guy who's going to know how to handle himself in the grappling department, a guy who's not going to make the same types of mistakes that we're used to seeing when Dustin gets on top of somebody and then when they're on the feet. I think this guy is so much faster than Dustin that it's not going to be funny. Speed kills in MMA, and I fully expect Magomedov to rip Dustin to the body until he folds over. You might not be able to clock this guy in the head and knock him out. I'll bet you could hit him in the liver and knock him out. So I think it's Magomedov. I think it's violence. That's maybe the other way to look at it, is if Dustin's going to win this thing, it's probably going to be by sub. Give me the under. Give me inside the distance. Give me Magomedov by knockout. I like the prospect here, the newcomer. He's somebody who got some shine on him early, left, got a few more years under his belt. Now he's coming back. I think he's probably the goods, Dan. Have you done any research on this one? Do you know this kid?
I've actually researched Abus heavily before he got into the PFL. I got a long sheet on him somewhere that I was looking to dust off, but I will say you nailed some of those notes with your breakdown of it, because when I saw him, it was really interesting. Like you said, he's more, not that I'm sure he did grappling in that 15 or so years when he started in Dagestan, but a lot of my notes were the same. This guy is definitely more of a striker. He works the body, which is great. I'm actually, spoiler alert, thinking this is a more of the decision route personally, but I don't hate you showing your work there, Clint, with the body work there. That's a very good point. Guys that are durable can kind of survive that. I like the points you made about Stoltzfus too. Like, it was one of those things where I didn't really look at the fight too closely. I may have picked him, but it was one of those dogs I didn't play, and I regretted it, but I was rooting for all you who did, right? And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that was just a good spot. You know, back to what we said previously, the benefits of perhaps focusing in on those prelims, right? But that being said, I do think that he's good enough to be here, Stoltzfus, and that's part of the reason why I think he can survive and has survived, and has been rather hard to stop, unless like you're a Adolfo Vieira latching onto that neck, or the Gerald Meerschaerts of the world, I believe, right, so to speak. But you know, outside of that, this guy can survive pretty well. That's why I'm not as confident. I'm gonna re-rack some of those recent fights to refresh myself on Abus, because he was one of my favorite guys going into that season. Now you look at some of the losses, at least the Luis Taylor one I can defend. Luis Taylor, especially look at that time of that season, that guy's deceptive record. It may look like a bad loss on like the Phil Haws of the world, or same with this guy, Abus Magomedov. But he was like Haws, he was meeting him at a really, really young age. And to your point about the grappling, even though it's become a much stronger thing lately, it wasn't as first. Like, you would see Abus kind of like out grappled and out muscled. Now, again, he was super young. The guy's only 31 now. He's been fighting since he was like 19 or 18, like fresh out of the chute. And he also was like one of those kind of tweeners. He really had to grow into this weight class. Like, if you look at his early footage, the dude is not as shredded. He's not as strong. He's not as competent. He's none of these things. He's a younger kid. So you got to be really careful just glancing at those records, right? But they're both at that age where they could get better. That being said, obviously there's a higher ceiling on Abus Nurmagomedov here. Abusupiyan. If you really want to stammer over names, I'm actually going to be looking at him as a potential. Again, I want to re-rack a couple of the recent fights. It's been a while since I wrote my sheet, Clint. But yeah, to answer you, I like Abus a lot as well, to the point where I may be looking at him as a potential parlay leg with someone else later in the card who we'll talk about.
I don't mind that at all, Dan. I think, if I respect your opinion so much. We've seen Dwight Grant be hard to put away. For me to call the knockout, like, that's because I really believe this kid and that speed difference is going to be the thing. But if he can win by knockout or by decision, it's lay the chalk or it's parlay time. You know what I mean? Like, you want to make sure you don't miss out on it. So I might, honestly, Dan, I don't think he's so bad to just lay down with. I could legitimately see myself just piling the 2.55 to win one And that's not a move I make very often.
Right.
I think he's worth that price tag in this spot. Dustin Stoltzfus is a guy who we've seen gas out. We've seen him slow down. We've seen him make bad decisions. We've seen him stand with guys he shouldn't stand with. Like, all these things line up for the fact that even if Dustin has a shot to win this fight, which, I mean, realistically he does, Bus is the guy that's going to take advantage of that, right? Like, Bus is the fire that you're going to get burned playing with if you do that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm with you there. Let's go. I'm all on the Bus. And I personally still think he does get the finish. We'll take a look at those props. That's going to be my sneaky look on this one, though, Dan, is I want to see what those prop numbers look like, because I don't think anyone's really expecting Dustin to get knocked out here. So hopefully we get a good number on it.
Sprinkle, maybe.
Sprinkle, baby. I love it. All right, everybody. Next fight up, your favorite psychopath, Charles Jourdain, making his glorious return here to the UFC, taking on Nathaniel Wood. Battle of the prospects here. This is a fun fight, Dan. Now, we know Charles Jourdain is going to come into this fight with a chip on his shoulder, right? Like, he arguably won the fight against Shane Burgos. I had a pile on Shane Burgos and felt gloriously relieved when they read the scorecards the way that they did. Now, I think you can make an argument in that fight for a draw. I think the draw probably was the best score you could have gotten in the Burgos-Jourdain fight. But regardless, Jourdain damn near killed. Oh, you know what? I am so sorry. The disrespect. My guy, Sean Knuckle. I was saving you for after the breakdown, and I rolled straight on into the next breakdown without talking about you. I am so sorry. Thank you very much for the donation here, my friend. We appreciate it at Pub Sports. No Fireball and popcorn this week. Croissants and Pinot Noir. I like it. Keep up the great work with a great guest with Dan, UFC Paris. Let's go, baby. Thank you, my friend Sean. We appreciate that. And I like the croissants and Pinot. That's a good way to go for UFC Paris. All right. So back to the breakdown here. You know what? You guys suck. I hate all of you in the chat, because my sneaky spot on this fight, Dan, was going to be Jourdain round 3. I'm just going to pull, just yank the sheet right off the art here. I was going to build. I was going to set the table. I was going to talk about the stats and the way these guys fight, and talk about how many times Wood has given it up in round 3, and talk about how Jourdain cooks his opponents and he cranks it up as he goes. No, you assholes in the chat. Mushroom saying Jourdain round 3, Raw Torque Jourdain round 3. Damn you guys. Couldn't I just have my moment? All right, you guys got it. That's the move, Dan. That is the move, because we've got Nathaniel Wood, who's coming up a weight class, still getting used to being up here at 135. He was big for, at 145. He was big for 135, was struggling a little bit, didn't do well with the weight cuts. Now he's going to be undersized coming up here, but he is fast. Nathaniel Wood is so freaking fast. And I think that's the most interesting part about this fight for me, because Jourdain is the fast guy at 145, right? But now he's taking on a natural 135er. We got to see what that speed difference looks like, because 135 fast is different from 145 fast. Those little guys can move, but I expect Charles Jourdain to have the power edge. And the way he was beating on Hurricane Shane, anybody other than Hurricane Shane goes down in that third round. Like, that was nasty. And we have seen, like I mentioned, Nathaniel Wood has 3 losses already in the third round. 4 of his 5 losses, Dan, are by finish. Nathaniel Wood is incredibly fast. He's a fantastic striker, and he starts hard, but because he starts so hard, he fades throughout the fight. He's there to be hit. He eats left hooks for days. Like, you see that all the time in his fights, is if you decide to counter one of his kicks with a hook, he just eats it right across the face. I don't think you want to do that against Charles Jourdain. Like, these guys are going to have the same reach, but Jourdain's 3 inches taller. Like, Rosa made Wood look small in there. Jourdain is going to have a massive size advantage here in this spot, and I expect Jourdain to come out mean and angry in this fight after losing that fight with Hurricane Shane. I do think this is a potential nice live betting spot, though, because I think Nathaniel Wood's speed, the way he starts, the way Charles Jourdain kind of works his way into a fight, Jourdain probably loses the first round. You can get a good live number on him after Wood takes that first round. And then Jourdain will chip himself back into the fight in that second and third round. That's kind of what we see classically from him almost every time, almost without fail. So maybe live bet instead of betting pre-flop if it looks like the tides are turning, but definitely a round 3 sprinkle from Charles Jourdain, because Nathaniel Wood can be had. He can be had late, and we know that's Jourdain's specialty. As he cranks things up, the deeper the fight gets, the more intensity he fights. So Charles Jourdain minus 140 is the pick for me. I can understand if you want to rely on the speed of Nathaniel Wood, the technical striking of Nathaniel Wood, but I think the flying knee of Charles, the hooks of Charles, that round 3 vicious intent to go out there and hurt and kill somebody, that's more the side that I want to be on here in this spot. Nathaniel Wood is a guy that I've got to tip my hat to. All respect, all love. He's a spectacular fighter, but I've never really bought in on him. So this is the spot where I think I want to be on the other side of him. That's just for me. I'm hoping you appreciate the round 3 sprinkle. I know you're a fan of those yourself. What you got for me here on this one, Dan?
Dude, I like it. I may have to tell you with a little bit of a sprinkle there. You know, three finish losses of Woods have come in that round 3 to Clint's point. And for me, you know, this was a spot where early in the card you were looking at a buy low spot, Clint, on a favorite. And to me, this is kind of what it looks like to me. But then you say your live betting theory, which absolutely checks and tracks. And now maybe I'm, you know, rethinking my buy low. Maybe it's just better to maybe get a plus number and have your
don't buy low, get plus money, baby.
yeah, and then just have that round 3 sprinkle, since you don't have to expose a lot for it, whether it hits or not. You have that kind of set pre-flop, right? Because it's going to be much harder to invest into something like that, obviously, once it gets going, much less for the price. So maybe you do the round 3 pre-flop, you either buy low or look live, like what Clint's saying, because there's a potential plus money payout. Because I could see Nathaniel Wood's speed and aggression, you know, his confidence making a quick turnaround. He's hungry to get back out there because, you know, it was October of 2020. Since then, he's only had the one fight, which was semi-recently, right? And this is weird for me, Clint, because it's like, I'm always worried about guys. The classic mistake when you go up a weight class is, especially that first fight or two, is you have kind of garbage weight. They put too much weight, either quality weight or unquality weight, right? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Either way, they're putting on weight. And that worries me because are you used to carrying the weight, so on and so forth. Whereas Nathaniel Wood looked like a bantamweight going in there at 145. And part of me, like, that worries me because I'm like, I don't know if this is the right weight class for him, because the guy didn't look like he was killing himself to make bantamweight. He wasn't. He was a sizable bantamweight, but he was not a big bantamweight by any means. He is a mid-range bantamweight, and he looks like a tiny featherweight out there. But then part of me is like, well, Dan, you always want fighters to come out and just be healthy, not cut the weight, come in, you know, if they go in to a fight above their normal weight class, let's try to go in at our like normal fight shape, but let's not kill ourselves with the weight cut, and let's see how that goes. And it looks like that's what Nathaniel Wood did. And here I am criticizing him for it, right? Questioning him. But you know, you can't get too hung up on that one sample size, because over a long sample size, the third round has not been the kindest. Now you're going against a much bigger guy who's not just a sizable 145. Jourdain used to fight and have regional titles up at 55 in the TKO organization in Canada. And this guy brings a heavy pace. So whatever weight that Wood does carry, he's going to feel every inch of that. Whatever struggles Wood has in the third round, he's going to feel every inch of that. You know, there was an argument for him in the Shane Burgos fight. Now, here's why I'm scared, because the 2 fights before that, I actually bet Jourdain round 3. And, of course, he gets the random sub against Venata in round 1. But, man, I can't forget that Andre Wolf fight. The one decision this guy wins, Clint, I bet him on round 3. He's got the guy who I'm always, you know, you want to talk about big bantamweights.
I want to fade Andre Ewell round 3 every time.
Every time. Oh, my goodness. Like, you know, and I just was screaming at my TV. I was screaming at my TV. I'm like, okay, everybody's like, oh, wow, he did the 300 thing. I'm like, I've seen the 300 thing 300 fucking thousand times by now. I want to finish. I don't care about Leonidas. I want to finish.
Same thing.
Yeah, I was just, so part of me, like will swear to never like bet round 3 after that, because that was such a frustrating experience for me.
It was there, man.
It was probably like a $17 bet. It was something so small and stupid. I was like, ah. But I'm with you, Clint. I'm with you. I'm just going to review a couple of things to watch here or there as far as styles, because this is going to be a greasy fight that I normally wouldn't want to get involved with. But the line movement, you're going to make this tighter. If I like it enough, I'm going to play it pre-flop. But if I don't, I'm definitely going to be looking for the live look. And I'll definitely credit my man Clint if we can cash a round 3 ticket on this one.
I like it, Dan. I like it. And my guy Evan just absolutely nailed it. I think Wood regained all the hype after a win over Rosa. Like, man, he was supposed to butcher Rosa.
Yeah,
he almost
I like
finished
Rosa, but that wasn't impressive.
Yeah, not even a little bit. And I mean, those chopping leg kicks, like that's not a game you want to play with Charles Jourdain, in my opinion. Like it's gonna be a fun fight. It's gonna be a back and forth war. I do think it'll be a bit of a chess match because I will give the credit to Wood. I think he is the more technical striker of the two. I really do. It's a matter of, at a certain point, size matters. I do think at a certain point, you've got to give credit to the fact that he is undersized at this weight class, and you've got a guy like Jourdain who will go to war with bigger men and break them over the course of 15 minutes. He can do that to a smaller man as well. I do think he'll lose round 1 as long as he doesn't get put out, which I don't expect Jourdain to get knocked out. He's not a guy that really we see get knocked out. And I think it all kind of lines up here to make sense for Charles Jourdain. If Nathaniel Wood can win this thing being faster and more technical, then all power to you, man. You know, we got to tip our hat there. But I expect at some point Jourdain is going to make this fight violent. And when that happens, I'll lean on the guy who thrives in the violence.
The last thing I'll add, too, is the southpaw look. Jourdain's a switch stance fighter, but I argue that he fights a lot more southpaw, and he's a smart guy, too. He actually studies his opponents, so he's going to see that Nathaniel Wood struggled against southpaws, whether it's Casey Kenny, John Dotson, and even moments in this Andre Uhl and John Castaneda, who was Castaneda's a switch stance, fought in the pandemic summer 2020, wrestler, short notice. Can't really count that sample size, but the point is, even his southpaw wins or switch stance wins, people had moments from a southpaw stance on Wood, whether they beat him or not. So southpaw stance to look out for.
Damn, Dan, you and my guy Liam, shout out to Liam Picks Fights, another regular guest of the show.
Liam's the man.
You guys he really is the man. But no, you guys with that sniping on the southpaw fighters, like that's something I see and hear both of you bring up so regularly. That's something I got to add to my game. I don't pay enough attention to the stances that these guys work out of. And you saying that just gives me just that much more extra bit of, I think I want a piece of Jourdain, because if that southpaw stance comes into play here, he is a very intelligent fighter. For as much of a wild man as he is in there, he does his homework. He studies up beforehand. He develops a game plan. And if you've got an advantage over somebody like that with the switch stance, he's going to take it. We know he's going to take it. And I think that just favors my angle a little bit harder. So yeah, man, minus 140. I think it's a fair price tag. I'd stay with Jourdain. If you want to take that risk of him losing round 1 and getting a better number live, I think we could potentially get an even money or a plus number live on Charles Jourdain after he loses round 1 to the faster guy. But you always run the risk of that round 1 guillotine. You know, the way he finished that time, we're expecting the fight to go deep, and, you know, he could just flying knee Air Jourdain this man. So you run that risk, right? Jourdain's a finisher. He could kill the kid early. So buyer beware. Maybe we go in pre-flop. Maybe we go in live. I'll make that decision sooner than later, but I don't mind minus 140 as a price tag in general, I think.
Same here.
All right. Glad we're on the same page there on that one, Dan. All right. Let's move along. We've got William Gomis taking on Jarno Errens in a battle of UFC debutantes here. And I don't know. I don't know, man. We've got an interesting matchup here on this one. What we've got is William is a minus 215 favorite over by Superbook Sports here, and Jarno is a plus 185 underdog. So both brand new to the UFC. I thought they were kicking the card off. Apparently they've been boosted all the way up to like the main card here for some unknown reason. Gomis is 10-2. Jarno is 13-3-1. Gomis comes to us from Aries FC. That's actually one of the promotions that I'm pretty familiar with. One of the ones that we line pretty regularly there over with Spectation Sports. So I was chomping at the bit. I was all excited. I'm like, I'm going to get a kid that I know, that I've studied before. No, I haven't studied him before. But he's another MMA Factory Perez fighter. He's going to be the hometown kid, long and tall, good body lock. He grinds the clock on people, you know, just kind of drags them to death along the fence and knees their thighs until they can't walk anymore. He knows how to turn off the cage, so he always gets that dominant position with his opponent's back up against the fence. Big looping punches and kicks at distance. He throws a spinning back fist that I really like. He likes his body kick. He's got a good little body kick on him, but he's mostly a pot shot guy, Dan. Just one and done. You know, he sets it up, one hard shot here, one hard shot, doesn't really do the flowing thing, combos, setting up the shots. And I'll be honest, I kind of prefer that. He's coming off a round 3 finish where the referee, it was kind of a bad stoppage. The guy wasn't really defending, but it was almost one of those Roy Nelson, are you going to make me hurt him type situations. The guy was covered up and he wasn't getting damaged at all. And Gomis just kept on swinging, but you could tell the punches were getting slower and they were getting lighter, and he was slowing down. He was gassing out. The ref still stepped in and stopped it. The kid got up and immediately protested and was angry at the stoppage, and in my opinion, rightfully so. Gomis was gassing himself out trying to get the finish in that spot. Got lucky with that guerrilla style, clubbing ground and pound. This guy does have some nasty ground and pound. I will give him credit for that. I actually think that's the best part of his game. If he gets on top of his opponents, he is nasty from that top position and can absolutely TKO people. Now, Jomo, on the other hand, heavy on his feet, plods forward, big, heavy, flat-footed, attacks the legs of his opponents from range. He's got fast hands and he's got solid power. He's got good, strong knees. He likes his explosive hip throws. He does rip at the body. He's one of these dudes that targets the body. I love seeing that. And he's got dangerous subs from his back. He's another guy that's willing to jump the guillotine, put himself on bottom position. Concerning, given what I just said about William Gomis. And he didn't respond very well when in his last fight, he gave up the back hooks to Mert, I think is the guy's name, super easily. I mean, he had no idea what to do when he gave up his back and got flattened out almost immediately. He got controlled in the body lock position. It was not a good look. And honestly, it's one of those ones where I think they're setting Gomis up with a win here, Dan. I think they looked at that fight tape and they went, oh, he can do that. So they set up William Gomis here with a guy who he should be able to control with the body lock. He should be able to avoid the hip throw. He should be able to get this guy down. And when he gets this man on the ground, if he wants to take the back and tap him out, he can. If he wants to get on top of him, flatten him, and pound him into the mat, he can. Like, I do think this is essentially a hometown setup spot for William Gomis, and I think he eventually gets the better of Jomo Errens.
This is a tough spot, man. By the way, you guys should like this video if you haven't already, just for the fact that Gomis looks like Carl from Family Matters had another child. Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. That's a good call. That's a good call. Wow. No, this is a tough one. You guys should like this video because when I'm trying to parse through what to look at, try to get my study in for this Monday show, I don't know how Clint does this for you guys week in and week out and is able to get this amount of research in. So I want to give a hats off to him because I didn't look at this fight at all, but I was just kind of perusing through their records. And you're right. Off face value, it does look like it's a setup spot. Obviously, Gomis is a Fernand Lopez fighter, right? Cyril Gane. So that's kind of like, it's one of those things that's like, are we fading? Are we trying to be contrarian and fade the people who they're setting up to win in the hometown? Or are we kind of reading between the lines here and going with the narrative? But the funny thing is,
worse than Blood Diamond.
But both of these guys, it's hard. I got to look closer to their actual fights because the competition is not impressive. But if anything, Jarno Errens has the more recognizable people on his list. He's got a win against Max Koga, who was, a bit wrongfully hyped too much for that PFL season. He was one of those guys that I kind of researched, but he was a really athletic kid. It's a round 1 fight. I got to go watch that. Maybe he just caught Max. Max, I know, had some upside, some well-rounded athleticism, could really do some things on the feet, at least against lower level comp. I haven't paid attention and kept tabs with Max Koga, so that kind of caught me by surprise. And if you look, also Jarno Errens also has wins by guillotine and armbar, multiple grappling-based wins, as well as grappling-based wins, like I mentioned, off his back. So if Gomis is a body lock guy and wanting to go for those takedowns, body locks are good as far as against guys with guillotines, right? You're not giving your head, like we were talking about earlier. Your worry was Benoit Saint-Denis, who really gives his head on the takedown. If he's more of a body lock guy, like you're saying, Clint, that's probably good as far as the guillotine threats go. I know arm bars aren't a big viable threat, but it does look like this guy's been working on his grappling as his career progresses. So I'm going to leave it at that. I have no take on this one. I'm going to look closer into it, but real interesting what you say, because on the surface level, it definitely looks like one of those setup spots.
Yeah. Let me know what you end up finding a little later in the week. Okay. Nothing wrong with that, man. This one definitely is a lower on the totem pole, but that's where, hey, you and I do some
Yeah.
good work together, because I start at the bottom, you start at the top, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. No, I think it's definitely a setup spot. I think it's a spot where the favorite should roll. You guys know me, though. I hate trusting debuting chalk. I hate laying the wood with somebody making their UFC debut. And you know, something like them being attached to the main, the co-main, you know, all these fighters that are getting presented on this card, you know that the hype and that's all baked into the line. So I'm not a big fan of it. I do think he should get the fight, or he should get the win. I think taking him inside the distance is a fair look here in this spot because of the weaknesses I saw in his opponent. But again, just you never know what you can trust. These regional scene fighters, if they take time off between fights, they make massive leaps, improvements in their skills and their abilities. So that can always bite you in the ass. I'm going to go favorite or pass in that spot.
Sounds good.
I like it. Next up, we've got a couple of more recognizable faces here. Nasrat Haqparast taking on John Makdessi. And let me tell you, they called John Makdessi the Bull for a damn good reason. This guy, man, Dan, I could not believe it. I counted him out completely against Ignacio Bahamondes, one of my favorite up-and-coming prospects. Ignacio is the man, and I thought he was just going to smash Makdessi. Makdessi almost took him out in the first round. I mean, it was a war. Both of those guys bruised and bloodied up and swollen. Like, John Makdessi is for real. Now, the problem is he's 37 years old. So he's coming off of a surgery 8 months out from like a hamstring issue, I think. And that's concerning at that age, right? Like, you got to have your flexibility. You got to have your speed. You got to have your explosiveness, your power. You got to wonder, with a surgery and a leg injury at this age, what's his performance going to look like at this stage of his career? Big question mark there for me. But the way he fights, like I said, I got to shout out our guy, John Stargarian, MMA Fox. He was one of the only people I heard calling for the upset on Makdessi against Bahamondes. I think I laughed at him. Like, I legitimately laughed at him. I was like, and I love John. I'm a dog hunter. I'm the guy that likes to pull that random ass dog out of my ass and be the guy that screamed, you know, as quoted by Ariel Helwani, the guy who screams on Twitter. I like to be that guy, but I never saw that coming. And our guy, John Stargarian, was like cement boots solid. No one budging him on Makdessi was going to win that fight. And holy shit, he did it. You know what I mean? So Big shout out. All props to my guy, MMA Fox. But in this spot, it seems very similarly to me, where they want to burn the old dog to get a name on the young fighter's resume. That's what they were doing with Bahamondes. They're doing it again here with Nasrat Haqparast. But Haqparast is not without his issues either, right? This guy keeps a nice high guard, strikes long, quick jab, good power in that left hand, lots of lateral movement. You love to see that. His whole game plan is kind of centered around these mini little blitzing attacks. Like, he'll kind of lull you in, and then all of a sudden it's hook, like these big 1-2 looping left and right hooks that have some serious pop on them. He was a finisher on the regional scene, but has not been able to translate that power up here to the UFC. He's coming off getting his broken hand repaired, and he got his ass beaten by Bobby Green. I mean, got the brakes beaten off of him by my guy, Bobby King Green. Now, Nasrat will have a 4-inch reach advantage here, but I'm now scared to count out John Makdessi, Dan. That last fight against Bahamondes, I'm like, yeah, you're 36 years old. You weren't that great to begin with. You're taking on a prospect. I'll fade you here. I ain't doing that shit again. I'm not lining up to take Nasrat Haqparast at this line, coming off of 2 losses and a hand surgery, minus 255. The comeback. Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. That's the wrong fight there. Minus 230. The comeback on John Makdessi is plus 195. We're seeing a changing of the guard in MMA as a whole right now, Dan. A lot of these older fighters are getting ushered out by the new generation. I don't know if Nasrat Haqparast counts as the new generation anymore. He's been around long enough, but it does seem like a passing of the torch kind of spot. But with the form he's been in lately and a surgery, and like I said, that recent run that John has put together where he's looked good in his last couple fights, even though he's older, I think this fight could play out a lot closer than the line is showing. And I have no interest in laying the chalk with Nasrat Haqparast. My guy, Danny Betts. What's up, buddy? Welcome to the show. Dan, how do you feel about this fight, and what are you doing on this one?
Well, I was just cruising to see where they were training because obviously I'm more familiar with these two cats, and I'm going to hit you with some more southpaw stats here. Nasrat Haqparast, of course, is a southpaw, and those are great points. I was going to mention that. I saw my guy, shouts to Mike's MMA picks. He was making that point about the hand injury, and that was like, ooh, that worried me, right? Because my initial when I look at this is, yeah, older versus young. Obviously, is he our first surface level thing that comes at us. But then I see Nasrat's a southpaw. How does McDessie do against southpaws? He's 0-4 against them, unless there's some of these lower level guys that may not be. Yeah. His last loss, of course, Francisco Masarandu Trinaldo was a southpaw. Ailin Patrick, one of his losses earlier in his career, not a great loss. I got to go back and watch that. Did he really lose that fight? Wow. But of course, Ailin is a southpaw. Medeiros will switch stances, but he did throw a lot of southpaw in a weird stymieing fight that, to be honest, could have gone McDessie's way. So I don't know how much you want to count on as far as that. But yeah, you go through everybody else is fairly strikers or not. They are orthodox stance fighters for whatever that's worth. Now, McDessie's a guy that, I know you're familiar with the movie Rounders, Clint. You've got that 90s love in you, just like me, right? And McDessie's a guy where I quote.
And I've been quoting Rounders way too often recently. I'm like, it's time. Okay. It's time to pull it out and go back for a rewatch. One of the best movies ever.
You got to. And this is one where I always think of Teddy KGB when I think of McDessie. I'm just like, always hanging around. He's that guy. And like, I love older fighters, and I got the love for the karate, and he's got a karate base and traditional martial. I got love for all those things, but something about McDessie, I'm just like, well, this guy, what is he doing hanging around here? Let's get him out of here, right? Like, so I'm leaning toward Haqparast on this one, but I don't. Listen, you're onto something, Clint, because there's always that inkling, like this could be closer than what we think. Like if you're laying it on Haqparast, and even if he wins, it could be one of those fights. And I think Clint was in line with me when he was saying earlier that you might be sweating on your ticket more than you'd like to be, or more than the price would indicate, in other words. So I'm definitely leaning toward Haqparast here, but this could be, a bit of a buyer beware. I want to see where it opened. It opened at minus 200, and yeah, only more money is coming in on Nasrat. So that only makes that point that Clint brought up more pertinent and makes me more aware of that, because the line movement does not seem to be aware of that. But the pick is Haqparast.
You know what? I like it. I'm going to also pick Haqparast, and honestly, that southpaw thing that you mentioned, I'm going to need to dig a little bit into that, because again, I just got to give you and my guy Liam credit. You guys always seem to sniff that out. And when somebody, especially an older fighter, has not adjusted to something that gives them problems like that, why would we not take advantage of it? Now, I know it's not easy to take advantage of it at a giant price tag like this, but at the same time, if it's historically something that they have struggled with, and this is a spot that appears to be relatively set up for the other guy, maybe it's something worth taking a second look at. So at this point, it's favored or pass. I'm not super interested at laying the chalk. I want to see how these guys size up to each other, just height, size-wise, muscle mass-wise. I do think Nasrat's side-to-side movement may cause some problems for McDessie. I thought Ignacio's movement was going to cause some problems for McDessie, but he was able to find the button pretty quick. So, yeah, but I'm at least a little bit more interested after hearing the southpaw stats, because exactly like my guy Danny says, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And if that's something that's plagued him his whole career, you would expect it to continue to be something when they turn 37 years old. Because trust me, once you get to that 34, 35 region, you just don't start doing new shit. You just don't.
And the last thing I'll add to that is that from the Nasrat point of view, whether he is in control or he gets hit by a counter that scares him away, that makes him more conservative, which I could see happening, even though I still see him winning, is that whether that happens or not, he's probably going to be more on the conservative side. No, right? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not throwing anything sexy at you guys here, but if you are in the favorite or pass camp of those feelings that Clint said, or you're somewhere in between me and Clint, who are pretty on the same side, it seems like, on this fight, I will say that minus 210, it's technically cheaper than the minus 225. Fight goes to decision. So if you were like, do I want to lay this chalk? If you're even considering laying the chalk or considering parlaying him, which, by the way, there's probably better parlay pieces out there. I'm just saying, if that's your prerogative, I would just remind you that fight goes to the decision is the same, if not a better price than paying for Haqparast. And are really seeing this fight go to decision no matter who wins here. So if you've got a house that allows you to do those kind of cheeky parlays, if those kind of cheeky kind of parlay pieces are your thing, I just want to throw that out there. It's nothing sexy. It's nothing mind-blowing, but this fight's probably going to decision is what I'm saying.
That is valid, and that is fair, and that is not a bad price tag. And Dan, there is nothing sexier than a ticket that cashes. So I don't even want to.
There we go. There we go. There we go.
I don't even want to talk about it. If it cashes, we're good, baby. I like
Yep.
that look, Dan. I think that's a smart way to approach it. All right, folks. A couple fights left here. We've got Alessio Di Chirico taking on Di Chirico, actually. Sorry about that. I've got a friend whose last name is Chirico. I always mix those up there. Taking on Roman Hopilov. What a fight, man. And I don't mean that in like the mind is blown, what a fight, hooray, this is going to be epic. I mean like what a fight as in like matchmaking I never expected to see come across my desk here by the UFC. Di Chirico is a guy that I had high hopes for. I really did. I figure he is a very well-rounded, gatekeeper-esque, low-end UFC fighter. And I was like, damn, he's pretty young, man. He's strong. If he could just put the tools together, he could really be something. He's 1-4 in his last 5, Dan. I don't think he has the goods to get him where I kind of expected him to get to at some point in his career. I'm kind of jumping ship here a little bit. He did get that round 1 head kick win over Buckley, which I don't want to call it a fluke, but seems a little like a low outcome, a little like a low percentage outcome for that fight. And his last win over that was a split decision over Julian Marquez, who we know is no prize at this point. He's a fun personality. He puts on some fun fights, but he's also not a guy that you're expecting a whole lot out of. So to go to split decision with Julian Marquez, again, it's not fantastic. He's a mid-tier, well-rounded, low-end UFC gatekeeper, in my opinion. Decent power, strong kicks, gets pulled into these low-volume staring contest type of fights, one-and-done Sam Alvey-esque, you punch me, then I punch you type of things until somebody falls over. The thing we got to remember, though, about Di Chirico, did it again every damn time, Di Chirico, is when he came to the UFC, he was much more active with his grappling, Dan. You look at his first run, his first stint of fights in the UFC. I want to get these numbers up here for you because I need to quote these to you. His last couple fights, he has been all striking all the time. But before that, he was more thought of as kind of a grappler here. So he made his UFC debut and hit 2 takedowns. He, in his second fight against Gareth McClellan, shot 6 takedowns and hit 2 of them. He took a fight off against Eric Spicely, but that was a round 1 finish there in that spot. Against Olawale Bangbose, another quick finish, but he still hit a takedown on it. In his Julian Marquez fight, 4 takedowns. In the Kevin Holland fight, 2 takedowns. And then he just stopped. His last couple fights, Mahmoud Muradov, Zach Cummings, Buckley, and then Abdulrazak Al Hassan. I mean, I know the Buckley and Razak fights, those were, the yin and the yang of MMA, the one head kick for you, one head kick for me type of situations. We can really kind of wash those from the record, but he's gotten away from his grappling game. He's not really doing that anymore. That's the key to this fight, Dan. Roman Hopilov, I see a bunch of people piling in on Roman Hopilov, and I'll be honest with you guys. When I looked at the names, I immediately felt the twinge of disappointment on Alessio Di Chirico's side of things, and I went, you know what? I probably want to bet Roman Hopilov too. And then I looked at the fight tape. This guy, I mean, it says he's got 83% takedown defense, and that's great. But you lost to Carl Roberson, a guy who is not UFC caliber, is on an awful run right now. I don't even know if he's got a job with the UFC anymore. That's not a great look. And then Albert Duraev, another guy coming off of a bad loss. The biggest thing in that fight was that he had no answer for the grappling. Like his frontline takedown defense was solid, but as the fight dragged on, as it turned into a war, his gas tank started kind of getting chipped away at. He started slowing down a little bit. He started getting a little sloppier. And then he gave up the takedown. And he had nothing off of his back. He had some of the worst positional mistakes I have seen in the UFC. And I know Duraev is supposed to be one of these guys that's like a stud grappler. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I can go, put on a singlet and coach someone wrestling or anything like that. But I know jiu-jitsu, and I know what you're supposed to do when someone mounts you. I know how to put my elbows on the thighs on it and keep my hands in tight so you can bump off and push on the hips. Roman Haqparast is swinging hammer fists from his back, trying to knock out or at least score on Duraev from his... I mean, bro, you can't be in the UFC at this stage of your career not knowing basic mount defense. If a D'Alessio comes out with a singlet on, he is winning this fight, and he looks like a minus 500 favorite, Dan. The problem is, I don't know if I can trust him to do that. You go back and look at the Zach Cummins fight, I had a gigantic bet on Alessio. I talked mad shit leading up to that fight about how perfect Alessio was to beat Zach Cummins, and then he slipped up in that third round and quite literally lost that third round off of that big power shot that dropped him at the very end of it because he stared at the man for 4.5 minutes in a round that he needed to win, that he should have won. I can't go to war with Alessio Di Chirico. Now I'm mixing up which one's even the correct way to say it, damn it. But long story short, I can't do it here, Dan. I know a lot of people have good reason for liking Roman Haqparast. He's going to be winning minutes on the feet. He's going to be longer. He's going to have better pace. He's the better striker, more accuracy. But I think Alessio hits harder. And I think Alessio's got the wrestling in his back pocket that can win him this fight. And I also think that if this fight turns into a war, even though he's coming off of that knockout loss, I mean, it was to Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Cut the kid a break. Alessio has shown he's been crazy durable over the most of his UFC career. I think when it gets ugly, he's the side that you want to be on. So I'm going to pick Alessio, but this thing is a coin flip for a reason. Fireball and popcorn, folks. Get a croissant. Pop some red wine. We're doing croissants and Pinot Noir for Perez. This is a fight I don't think I want to have a large investment on, but it's Alessio or pass for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, especially that it's a fight that you don't want to have a large investment on. I'll give you some more southpaw stats. I don't know if it'll help, but Di Chirico is 2-2 against UFC level southpaws. Of course, one of those losses was to Zach Cummins that you mentioned. It came down to that round 3 staring contest, and he paid the price. No excuses there, though. I will say that was in the summer pandemic 2020. And again, when those fights, especially if it's those fighters' first and only first fights in the pandemic, I want to grade on the curve, right? We don't know what was going on there. That being said, it looks like he's still kind of training at home in Italy for this one. That being said, Kapilov training at home in Makhachkala, Dagestan. No one too recognizing other than Armin Petrosian, who came off the Contender Series, who he's training with. No other big names outside of that guy. And you're right, on the bottom, like he looked, completely lost. Kapilov, it's tough, man. I like these smaller cats in divisions. Part of me always roots for him, but middleweight is such a weird division because it's like heavyweights who cut weight. See Alex Pereira, Poatan, right? Like this division holds Alex Poatan Pereira and Darren Wynn. I mean, it's a big spectrum middleweight is, and Kapilov is more toward the Darren Wynn side, not because of his height, but because of his stature. He's a very small guy. He's a young kid. He's 31. I got to remind myself, but he looks like he's like 19 or 20 out there. Whereas Di Chirico, like you said, he's been pretty tough aside from, a square dipping into an open stance head kick, which, it's probably good that he's been away for a little bit now because of that. That of course was a or was that a win? Sorry, that was a loss. And then he has the win in the open stance head kick. I'm sorry, against
they
Joaquin
just went
Buckley.
1-1 on that, Dan. He's got one win and one loss back to back with the same exact kick.
Yep. His other southpaw loss was when he first came in the UFC against Bojan Veličković. It was closer than the unanimous decision, I believe, but it was tough. Like you said, Di Chirico came in like more grappling, right? And but that's also kind of where he started having his shortcomings early on. So I don't know if he got scared off of that, Clint. And because I agree, if he goes back to that here, there's a solid avenue. And of course, his other southpaw win, which you can't put too much weight in, came after Bojan Veličković. That was against Gareth McClellan, who, of course, didn't have the greatest run there in the UFC. So I don't know how much you want to credit him for that. But yes, there is his kind of southpaw striking history. I'm going to have to relook at the comb to see if there's anything like super glaring. But even then, like, I'm leaning toward Di Chirico here is probably going to be my pick, by the way, folks. Spoiler alert. But even then, I would still need this line to keep moving in the way it's directioning, so where it would flip and get DeChirico at plus money. And even then, I would be kind of worried about putting my money on this fight, even if I'm picking the favorite who gets flipped to dog odds, at which point you don't have to justify it to anybody. The old value argument right there is more than enough to take a little bit of a dog shot. Will I? I honestly don't know, because like you said, Clint, this is a fight that I don't know if I want to be too invested in, but give me DeChirico.
All right. I'm glad we line up on that one. I really am glad to see we're on the same page for that fight, because it's a questionable spot for sure.
It is.
You know what? You guys know me, though. I more often than not believe the fighters, right? If he comes in and Alessio does his fighter interview on media day and he says anything about wrestling, if he talks about wanting to get the takedowns going, he talks about wanting to get in there and get back to his roots, that might be enough for me to take a stab. That might be enough for me to jump in there and go, okay, because Haqparast is awful on the ground. I mean, it's so bad that if Alessio comes in to look to grapple, like I said, he'll look minus 500. He'll win this thing running away. But if he comes out to strike, it's a matter of, can he land a bomb? He'll be getting pieced apart. He'll be losing that fight until the moment that he wins it, if he comes out to strike. So just one of those untrustworthy fighters, in my opinion. So be careful if you put your money anywhere near this fight. You got to understand, if you're betting Haqparast, yes, you're getting the better striker, but that ground weakness is something that can bite you in the ass. If you're betting on Alessio, yes, you're getting the better grappler, but you've got that low-level fight IQ that you got to deal with, and you might be screaming at the TV in the third round when it's 1-1 with 2 minutes left in the fight, and the fight's there for the taking, and he won't pull the damn trigger, because that was me in the Zach Cummings fight, and I will never forget that fight, and I will never forgive him for losing that fight. Oh, all right. It's over. Moving on to betting, Dan, seriously, betting these fights.
I feel you, brother. I feel you.
An exercise in masochism. We do it to ourselves. It's brutal. I signed up for it. It's fun, but those are the nights where you're like, why did I knew he could be low volume. Why did I do this to myself?
Right. Absolutely.
All right. Co-main event, everybody. We're getting to the goods here. Robert the Reaper Whittaker is taking on Marvin freaking Vettori. And this is a big stakes fight, right? Dan, the last loss for both of these guys, neither of them has lost to anyone not named Israel Adesanya since 2018. Like, these are the cream of the crop in this division. These are the guys that are headed for the title, or have been to the title, or will fight for a title. Like, this is a fantastic fight, and I love it. Now, Robert Whittaker needs no introduction from me. Everybody should know this man. Maybe one of the most criminally underrated champions of all time. He beat everybody for a long time, moved up a weight class, filled himself out. Bobby Knuckles is absolutely the man at 185, and it just seems that Israel Adesanya is his kryptonite. He's got that bouncing sideways karate stance, those big blitz attacks where he comes in with heavy power. He broke Cannonier's arm with a body kick that got blocked. He disguises that head kick that he likes to throw. It's that Reaper combo, the 1-2 head kick that he likes to throw out there, kind of reminiscent of the Usman-Leon Edwards knockout that we just saw. I mean, massive experience with 5-round fights. He's fighting in a 3-round fight for once in God knows how long. He doesn't fight 3-round fights. I know his last couple have been, but it's got to be a nice change of pace there for him. That legendary durability, something that's, I'll be honest, I've questioned it, Dan. I really have, because every single opponent except Kelvin Gastelum has dropped Robert Whittaker since the OL fights. He's been dropped in every single fight. So you wonder, how many beatings can a man take before it starts to make a difference? I really think we're just like one good power shot away from seeing Robert Whittaker get KO'd, even though he's a young guy, just because you can't keep taking that kind of punishment forever. Eventually it catches you. But Marvin ain't the guy to do it, right? Marvin's a decision machine. He does not have power. We've seen it time and time again. He's a pillow-fisted gas machine. He reminds me of, like, if you stuck Colby Covington with a little ball inflator and just Like that's what you'd get with Marvin Vettori. He's got the good solid grappling, chain wrestling, pins his opponents up against the fence, always makes them work. He uses that gas tank as a weapon. He really does. And his one finish in the UFC is a submission win. Really good opportunity in a scramble that he attacked. You know, he went to war with Paulo Costa, up a weight class, essentially up 2 weight classes, thanks to Paulo Costa calling in sick at 205 there for that fight. And he just took everything, man. No questions about this guy's durability whatsoever. So Robert Whitaker's made some interesting comments about wanting to break Marvin Vettori, and I'm just like, good fucking luck, dude. Like, I don't think that's happening, personally. I don't want to doubt Robert Whitaker, but I don't think that's happening. And then when we get into the wrestling department, Robert Whitaker's always had a good, solid wrestling base. But has he really been like wrestling anybody? Like, he took down Kelvin Gastelum, somebody who's been known to get kind of exposed there in the wrestling a couple times before. And then he's really mostly struck with the strikers. You know, Marvin Vettori was a guy that was able to take down Israel Adesanya multiple times. I know that's a young Israel Adesanya, and it was a while ago, but he still managed to do it. And he's only 28 years old. I know this is maybe a bit of a hot take, Dan, but we've been seeing that changing of the guard that we talked about earlier in the show. Robert Whitaker is minus 220. Marvin Vettori is plus 190. And I'm extremely tempted to take the stab here on Marvin Vettori. I think the way that you play it, though, is the over, the decision, Marvin Vettori by decision, Marvin Vettori by split decision. Like, I think this fight can play out very, very closely because I don't expect Marvin to hurt Robert Whitaker with anything, but I think the volume edge is going to be there. And then the big ooh-ah shots of Robert Whitaker are going to be the eye-catching moments in the fight. And it just comes down to, what do these judges favor? If Marvin Vettori is blocking the head kicks, is he going to get more credit for being the more volume-based striker in this spot? He will have a 1-inch reach advantage. I do expect him to be pushing the pace. It's been a long time since anybody's really tried to test the takedown defense of Robert Whitaker. Will we see him on his back for the first time? I'm not sure, but I do think this fight is going to play out extremely closely. And I have no problem saying that I've had my eye on Marvin Vettori for a long time. And I do think he's a future contender and title challenger at this weight class, especially with how young he is, that durability, that gas tank. He's the kind of kid that you can count on to improve. I don't love betting against Robert Whitaker. I'll be completely honest with you, especially with how he's proven time and time again. He's still here, like you mentioned, hanging around at the top of the weight class. But I think this could be the spot where somebody gets him. I might go with Marvin Vettori for the upset here, Dan. How about you?
This is tough, man, because Robert Whitaker is one of those guys that, like, I'm not sure if I've ever picked against him. I was going to pick against him for the first time last time. And then I ended up coming up with some crazy logic to, like, justify a pick for him. And even though I scored it for Israel Adesanya, I did not have it for or a split or anything like that. That being said, Whitaker did do enough to get himself a split in the judge's eyes for whatever that's worth. That was a close
but clear fight to me, Dan. That was one of those ones where I felt Robert Whitaker competed. I felt like it was a close, contested fight, but at the end of the day, I also felt it was clearly an Israel Adesanya win. So,
me too. And I didn't bet him, but I was having a killer betting night that night because I remember that night. I literally had like every pick right up until this, even like saying the round, like, Brunson's going to lose in round 2. Tai Tuivasa is going to win in round 2. And like all these things were happening. And even then I was just like, I'm still going to keep, I don't think I can bet this. And maybe I put something small actually on maybe by decision, but even then, again, totally cool with Adesanya winning. But I just got to admit my Robert Whitaker, I'm a Marxism. That's not the right definition of Marxism, but you guys know what I mean. I'm a mark for Robert Whitaker here. That being said, putting that aside, right? This is MMA, guys. Anything can happen. If my guy Clint here ends up back in Vettori at the betting window, I'll be the first to give him a pat on the back for it. But this feels like a pretty straightforward match. You've got, essentially the two parallels of the Grimace, right? The Grimace is that purple thing that you don't know what it is from the McDonald's Happy Meal. I don't know how young our audience is you're working with here is, Clint, but I know you're familiar with the Grimace. And if you watch Clerks animated series, you know that nothing can kill the Grimace. And whenever I compare the Grimace to an MMA fighter's analog, it's either my guy Blagoy Ivanov, right? Because he looks like the Grimace and is unkillable. Or Marvin
That is a
Vettori,
great comparison. I love that.
Yeah,
Blagoy will
not
forever
because-
be the
yes,
Grimace to me now.
He is
Dan.
the Grimace. Nothing can kill the Grimace. And then Vettori, especially if you watch him, like I think like 2 fights ago, he actually weighed in like this purple jumpsuit and he shaved his head. And he's like, I guess it was like the Hermanson fight. He looks like the Grimace. And Vettori, more importantly, he's unkillable. Like you cannot kill this guy. So I think that this is hitting the scorecards either way. And if you are going to take a dog in Vettori, maybe do what Clint said. Maybe look at that decision prop because you're going to get an even bigger plus number there, right? In a fight that I see going to decision. That being said, I'm on the other side. I'm on the other guy by decision because Robert Whittaker is not only 5-0 against UFC level southpaws. A lot of different styles there. You got two completely different versions of Yoel Romero, Mr. Dr. Jekyll there. You've got the counter-fighting Darren Till. You've got an aggressive volume grappling Kelvin Gastelum. And you've got the wild man, do-or-die bum rush, Derek Brunson. All those he won by decision, minus, of course, the wild man who always do-or-dies by his own sword, which is Derek Brunson. Of course, he finished that fight, right? Other than that, Whittaker himself can go to decisions, especially with some southpaws. So all signs point to decision here, but stylistically, if you look at it, not just the southpaws, even the weird loss, which you could air quotes loss, it was kind of competitive. It was a weird fight at a weird time. One of Whittaker's last welterweight fights, one of his last ones, not his last one against Court McGee. Even that fight, for his Court McGee being a grinder, that was a lot of striking in that fight. And of course, Stephen Thompson, Adesanya, long counter strikers, people who pressure, people who wrestle, people who especially pressure and wrestle like Vettori. Whittaker wipes them out with flying freaking colors. He may have the scary moments here or there if they're a big power puncher, which outside of Vettori dropping Hermanson in the first round, outside of that one sample size of relevant, Vettori, I love Vettori. Not really a power puncher, right?
I'm not reading into that drop either. I didn't mention it, Dan, because I was like, I don't want anybody to think he's got that. That's not a thing he does.
Right. And so it's hard because I don't disagree with what Clint's saying. Like, I completely agree with his assessment on Whittaker as far as, dude, he's waiting. I've been waiting for the same thing Clint said. Like, he is due to get his chin check. Like, Clint, you're 100%. I'm with you on that. I just don't feel like Vettori is the threat for that. And more specifically, I think he lines up pretty well. Again, could he win? Could this be the time? Like, and if it does, I can't be surprised. Like, again, Whittaker, outside of like his losses to Adesanya, it feels like he's been due for a comeuppance at this weight class. I don't blame anybody thinking that, but history will tell you that this stylistic matchup, from the stance to the style, he should pass his flying colors. So what I did is I'm actually going to be playing Whittaker by decision. Now, I'm not sure how much. At least if it's minus 135, for example, which is showing in my house really tempting, it's going to be at least 1.35 U to get that unit return. But here's what I want to balance out is this is one of my more confident angles. And do I want to double dip in case Whittaker does get the finish and like pair Whittaker with Abus Magomedov, what I was teasing earlier in the program? Two really chalky guys, but if you pair them up, depending on the number, you're getting either like, 98. So that's close to even money. That's 2 cents shy of even money if you just pair those two together. Now, if I pair those two together, I'm going to be more exposed. So I'm probably just going to keep it to the 1.35. But if I'm not as confident in a bus and I don't end up parlaying Robert, then I'm going to be testing my house's limit. Each house is different for their props, folks. You have to look. Some cap you off nice and tight, which is probably a good thing. Some will let you play a little deeper. This is a prop where I might play a little deeper depending on what my overall exposure is. Because, again, in case you can't tell, I really like this Whittaker by decision. So that's where I'm at on this one. I'm a big fan of Vettori. I've interviewed him. If anybody wants to take that dog money, I never hate on someone cashing a dog ticket. You should be proud of that. But I'm on the chalk here.
I hear you. I think I'm going to be on an island on this one, Dan, but I honestly feel like this fight is going to play out closely. So it's one of those ones where I could be left being the boy who cried value on Sunday morning. You know what I mean? You get that plus 195 and it fights out close and the split goes to Rob. Well, you should have just picked the damn winner, Clint, right? I might be looking to lay a chalkier price on an over 2.5 or the fight goes the distance or something like that. and then make
Nice.
a smaller bet on
Yeah.
the underdog, maybe to pull the upset. Because I do think that this is a spot where if Vettori is going to be the guy that I think he can be, this is a test he needs to pass. Now, he's not on a clock or anything. He's only 28 years old. The kid has plenty of time to grow and to learn. And like you said, if this is a stylistic matchup that Robert Whittaker has had no problems with in the past, but I feel like Vettori's nonstop gas tank could be something that could be an issue over a 15-minute fight. You know, Yoel Romero in a 25-minute fight, a guy that doesn't tend to use his wrestling the way we would like a Olympian to use their wrestling in MMA. Different battle from a guy who's going to go out there and stay in your face nonstop. But at the same time, the jab of Robert Whittaker could be his biggest weapon here in this fight. He literally could just like scoot and jab the face off of Marvin Vettori if Marvin does that thing where he kind of like square shouldered, like just gets in front of him the entire night. He would be a sitting duck for that jab. So it's going to come down to game plan. Either way, though, I think we can count on the durability for these two guys, the lack of finishing ability on Marvin's side, and then the durability on Marvin's side to push this thing over to a decision either way.
Sure. Yeah. Agree there.
That's definitely the way that I'll be honest. I'm more interested in looking, and then I will be taking a look at what Rob by split decision is when that prop drops. That's
those split decision props you guys play
Vettori
are
by
big
split
numbers.
decision. I'm gonna look at that split, baby. You know, actually, they usually do drop the fight goes to split decision just by itself. Like, don't even pick a side. Fight goes to split, and you'll get 4.5 or 5 to 1 on something like that. So I may look at that prop for this particular fight as well.
Yeah, see what that's paying out. I don't know what the judging is going to be like, but it's a new area. That being said, judges across the pond, I feel like are more in line than the judges over here in the States. They're not getting hung up by any of those stupid Dana White directives from like Izzy Yan that's messed up our 10-8 systems still to this day. So I will say, be careful with the negative judging or depending on disjointed judging, because sometimes they surprise you across the pond. I've spoken to some really high level judges. I really like what I hear from them. I like that judging better than judging over here. So anyone playing that angle, be careful. But yeah, if you see like any split decision numbers, dude, those are always usually the nice numbers just if you want to sprinkle.
Yep, just a little taste. And hey, we didn't talk about it enough, I don't feel like, Dan. UFC's traveling again. We said this is UFC Paris, the hometown rub, folks. Watch for the people from the hometown. Like, those are going to be the folks that you may be surprised get the nod in a close fight. So just something to be forewarned. If it's a close fight, it's probably going to the hometown kid. All right. Main event time, baby. Let's go. Ciryl Gane taking on Tuivasa in your main event here. And I cannot wait for this fight. Dan, this one should be so fun, so exciting. And then about 15 minutes in, I'm going to go, son of a bitch, he got me again. Gane is just going to run and kick the calf of Tuivasa for 25 minutes, isn't he? Like that, we always hype these fights up, get all excited for him. It's going to be ruckus. It's going to be a banger. And then Gane just stays away from his opponent and pokes at them when they can't touch him back until he gets a decision win. Man, I am so happy coming off of the accurate call of Ciryl Gane losing to King Francis Ngannou himself. Like, I couldn't be more proud of my guy Frankie Murder going out there and shifting the game up and taking down the man with the ground game, being a true champion and finding a way to get the win when the deck is stacked against him. But we can't deny that Ciryl Gane is that guy, right? Like, the UFC propped this man up to take the belt from their champion so they could negotiate better. He's legit. He moves like a 170 pounder, Dan. Like, he's so light on his feet. He's smooth. He glides. And when he decides to grapple, he's got a slick grappling game, takes people down, attacks ankle locks. Tuivasa is just your marauder. He's a brawler, man. I love it. He is the replacement for the Black Beast when Derek Lewis decides to finally hang him up. Tuivasa is going to be the guy that carries that banner for us for a while here in the UFC. Arguably more dangerous when he's hurt, right? Like, he comes out and gets into a brawl, and as soon as he gets clipped and wobbled, all of a sudden he starts throwing with some extra special level of power. He's like Gohan, man. Like, as soon as he takes some damage or gets angry, you're done. You're dead. You just got to avoid those big power shots. Gane is the type of guy that will play chess. He will stay the outside. He will stay away from the power. And he's a big favorite because of that. And I think justifiably so. But this is heavyweights. Minus 550 on Ciryl Gane, plus 425 to come back on Tuivasa. Anybody wanting to take the shot on Bam Bam to land that big bomb, I don't fault you for it. He's got 25 minutes to get it done. The only issue for me is the grappling. We saw in his last fight, he got taken down by Derek Lewis, man. Like, I know Gane doesn't always use his grappling, but if he wanted to, it would be all too easy to put Tuivasa on the mat. And we know Ciryl Gane is a submission threat, man. I can absolutely see the sub prop being on the table here for Gane, especially with those heel hooks. If he wants to look for a ground game, a transition, a guy who's not used to really playing off of his back. And we know the Black Beast can't exactly hold anybody down. He's not exactly a wrestler. He's got that trip takedown. He's heavy on top of people, but once he gets there, he doesn't really know what to do with it. So not overly shocking that Tuivasa was able to get back up to his feet and then land a nuke on him. The other thing that really stuck out to me in this fight, Dan, is that Gane is going to be massive in this fight. I didn't realize the size difference between Tuivasa and Derek Lewis. And then you go back and you see Derek Lewis versus guys like Ngannou. And Ciryl Gane is huge. I mean, he is on not par, but close. He's almost the size of Francis Ngannou. And Tai Tuivasa is a decent bit smaller than the Black Beast. So the speed may be there. He could be a guy that could match the speed and athleticism, the movement of someone like Ciryl Gane. And I think that's where the knockout prop gets interesting, because I'm a big speed kills guy. I think if you've got the speed advantage, that's a huge thing that you just can't make up that difference with somebody. If I'm faster than you, I'm simply faster than you, and I'm going to get to the button quicker than you will. So I do think that Tai Tuivasa can't be counted out here. I think he is live potentially to land a bomb. But we've still, even against Ngannou, we never saw Ciryl Gane hurt. I don't know that he's capable of being knocked out, quite frankly. So we'll see that tested on Saturday, but I'm going to lean with the favorite here in this spot. No real betting interest, but I think Ciryl Gane probably gets it done here and capitalizes on, steals the hype, sucks the hype out of someone like Tai Tuivasa after getting that big win. And like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets it done by sub.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked there either. And I think that's the thing here, is how much is he going to grapple? Is he going to grapple some? Definitely. And in a perfect win here, he's probably going to have to at least grapple as much as the Rozenstruik fight, which I would have thought he should have grappled more. Now, you go back and look at the stats in Gane's defense, he did try to grapple more against Rozenstruik. He went 2 for 14 against takedowns. Rozenstruik, not as good. You could argue they're actually close to the same level of takedown defense, but awful. Rozenstruik, much more of an incentive to take down than Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa, it's funny, a lot of the stuff that he's done well recently, I went back to watch Clint, and he actually did a lot of this stuff pretty well, not just for heavyweight, like just in general. The guy's got deceptive experience. He's fought in some weird MMA leagues. Like, you might find a loss to an older gentleman that looks really bad on Tai. It was when he was really young. It was like a small cage, like kickboxing event in Australia. He also is 5-2 in boxing. He's got a bit of a pro boxing record there. And of course he came out training with guys like the Mark Hunts of the world and the like, right? So his experience is definitely deceptive. And when he first came in, I noted that, but I was always looking to fade him, and people called me crazy when I picked Arlovski to beat him. Now, he beat Arlovski, right? I was wrong, Clint. I would say I didn't look too crazy because everybody was like minus 300, more like minus 500. How is he going to KO Arlovski, And we saw with guys that are more veteran savvy can kind of have that outside outfoot point style. That can definitely affect him, right? Even Blagoy Ivanov, speed kills. Blagoy does not have speed or athleticism, much less any level during Gane. But Gane fights a lot from what? Southpaw, right? And the only southpaw, which is not many at heavyweight, that Tai fought, as far as notable ones, is Blagoy Ivanov. And if you look, those classic southpaw jabs, the check right hook, which is something that Gane's going to need to lean more on, because that seemed to really give Tuivasa problems. I dropped Tuivasa in the beginning, right? But if you look at that fight, and even with the Arlovsky fight, they were closest decisions that either Ty won or lost, and grappling was involved in that. So grappling is definitely going to need to be involved here. But I almost wonder, Clint, is it that much easy of a fix? Because as we saw, granted, it's Ngannou, who is bigger than Gane and obviously bigger than Tuivasa, who's obviously stronger. I was trying to tell people that he was a better counter wrestler than given credit for. Granted, I had biased inside information, so I don't know how much you can listen to me, but I was on the right side of you. Thankfully, we were both on the right side of that one, I should say. Thankfully, when he showed that. But what we did see is that when he was grappling, it tired him out, right? Because that's not his base. His base is a striker. Even before the Muay Thai that Gane comes from, what did he do before that? It was soccer, right? So whether Muay Thai or soccer, you can't see my feet, but I'm bouncing light on my toes, because that is the cardio dynamic. It is in more of a cardiovascular kind of a aerobic output. It is a different than a dynamic tension grappling output. It's much different. Now, again, he was on the losing side of that. Maybe if he's on the winning side, I'm sure his cardio is better. But how much better? I mean, at the end of the day, this is still a heavyweight. He is very athletic. Gane is, yes, but he still needs to, and I hate to use that word explode, but he does. He explodes a lot on the feet. We see a lot of those guys with that explosive dynamic movement, which Gane has in spades. We see those guys, if you really make them grapple for long periods of time, whether they're the hammer or the nail, they can grapple themselves into a hole. Even guys who came up grappling, right? Like they have it bred into their blood, like Curtis Blades. What was his danger, right? Is that he can push a pace, which could tire Ty, because again, Ty is also at a cardio disadvantage here, right? He could tire Ty out, but does he have to wrestle himself into a hole? And if a guy like Curtis Blades at heavyweight will wrestle himself into a hole at decision if he wrestles too much, right? He almost did that against Volkov. Well, what does it look like when a striker decides to do that, right? And again, yeah. Tai Tuivasa has a decent get-up game. So I don't know if he can finish him on there. He's got a good get-up urgency. He'll go for single legs. He'll go for underhooks. He knows how to use the cage. And like you said, when you pour it on him, he almost gets more dangerous. So between Gane having to fight smart, I feel like between the energy of grappling to finish him on the floor to the fact that Gane, as talented as he is, he's not a big finisher. And again, Tai Tuivasa, most dangerous when he's on the verge of being finished. All signs for me, as far as a Gane victory in win conditions, are pointing to a decision. It's how does he do it? Is he going to be efficient enough in his attack to do it, right? So I don't disagree with Gane being favored, but like I say, Clint, anything over 2-1 in a heavyweight fight, you should always squint at. Now, there are some exceptions. In fact, maybe you could even argue that he is justified to be in that 2-1 favorite range over Tai Tuivasa. But we're not talking about 2-1, are we, folks? We're still a week away. We're talking about over double that at 5-1. And at a certain point, which, again, this wasn't the case because Franny won by decision, something that I didn't call RCs. I'm not going to flex that, right? So, aside from that, right, like, sure, Franny won by decision, but if you go back and read my breakdown, part of my logic, Clint, was that fighting safe is not necessarily safe at heavyweight. Doing what is quote-unquote safe fighting, which is often correlated with point fighting, which, again, point fighting is safe, and it's definitely what Gane should and probably will do. I'm not arguing that, folks. But in this division, this is the most dangerous division to do that in. Doesn't matter. Even if it's a guy half as dangerous as Tai Tuivasa, that's still 25 minutes at heavyweight, man. That's still 25 minutes of something to go wrong. And you want to talk about kicks, I think that Tai Tuivasa is the more dangerous kicker. In fact, I'm dropping the name Pedro Hizo in my breakdown video that I started to record before the show. I'm going to finish after the show, Clint. You guys are going to be the first here to know my pick before it hits the presses at MMA Junkie. Oh. And I'm not going to win any popularity, but I'm going to go with Tai Tuivasa here. I think he's going to be the one throwing the leg kicks. Think about it. Outside of the mythical wrestler,
I thought about the leg kicks.
Think about it. Outside of the mythical wrestler, it's easy to be like, oh, what's the way to beat Gane? Wrestling. And you know what? There's some credence to that because it was wrestling that got Francis Murder over that hump, right? But that being said, guys, no matter what scenario, what time period of MMA, what division we're talking about, gambling perspective or not, that's kind of the easy answer, isn't it? Isn't it always the wrestler? Isn't that always, if we're having this stylistic kryptonite thing, like that's kind of always the answer. Okay, so let's put the wrestler aside, Clint. What is the best style to beat Ciryl Gane? I'm going to need a guy that's kicking legs, because you're not going to compete with his footwork. I'm going to need a guy who's got competent footwork and can corral, which Tai Tuivasa can, but I'm going to need him kicking legs. Check. Ooh, well, he goes against southpaws, and we saw Tai have trouble against the southpaw. True, but even though I played and cashed on Blagoy and agree with the decision, that fight was pretty deceptively close, because Tai Tuivasa, he doesn't drop, but he rocks Blagoy in round 2 because Blagoy is unkillable, right? He's able to no-sell it and still win the round with some grappling at the end. Again, grappling that Sambo champ who beat Fedor when he was Fedor. People look at, again, Tai Tuivasa's record is much more underrated. A lot of his losses, he was camp traveling. He actually went away from Tiger Muay Thai during those losses. He was getting pushed way too high against guys like JDS, who, if you look, JDS and Ciryl Gane,
he has He was the prospect that they shot to the rafters way early, and it cost him.
And then everybody went from overhyping Tai, where I was the one like fading him, right? And then what did everybody do? They started just shitting on Tai. And I was like, wait a minute. He's not that bad. And I went from fading him to cashing on Tai. So maybe part of that bias is playing into this here. Tai's been a bit of a money train because he's been undervalued. But you're going to undervalue, again, you forget Tai Tuivasa, just this line at heavyweight. You are undervaluing the underdog when you're putting this kind of a line at heavyweight. And I'm not even just standing behind this argument. Again, I'm going to want a guy that's going to throw leg kicks against a southpaw. Back to that Blagoy fight. He had Blagoy limping. Like, Blagoy could barely walk. You never see Blagoy like give credit for people's strike. The guy's unkillable. Like, Blagoy was actually barely able to walk. And that's something you never see Blagoy, even if he's feeling that way. He never shows. Like, you know how hard you have to hit and kick to make Blagoy even off field out, especially from a southpaw. It was the inside kick, kicking across. So if, Gane comes out and shows southpaw, I think he's going to get his leg kicked. And I think so because if you go look at the stats, and I hate stats, folks, be careful because they don't count checks. You actually have to go and watch. I've made this mistake myself, grading Jan Blachowicz, who has really good kick defense. But if you look at the stats, you can get full and be like, Jan Blachowicz doesn't check kicks. Look, everybody lands in the 90 percentile. You got to be careful because that's almost the case for everybody. But if you actually go back and look at the footage, as good as leg kicks as Ciryl Gane does, and he comes from Muay Thai, motherfucker can't check leg kicks. And that's not the first time we've seen that, folks. We've seen a lot of good strikers and good leg kickers, not good when it's a two-way street. Gaethje versus Barbosa. Like, remember, he won the battle of the leg kicks before he knocked him out. It's because nobody ever thinks to leg kick the leg kick guy, right? And that's going to be huge. And what Tai also does is he feints and he likes to counter, which again is good, whether it's a karate Machida point fighter or a Muay Thai stylist point fighter. If they're on their bike and they are point fighting, you want heavy Muay Thai counter fighters. Those have been the guys that have always knocked him out. That's been the answer, right? Perez leg kicking Wonder Boy till the knockout comes. Shogun Hua leg kicking Machida till the knockout comes. Like, stylistically, you want me to answer that hypothetical with taking out the mythical wrestler answer? Well, I actually come up with an answer that's kind of close to Tai Tuivasa and who he's been formulating himself to become. I really feel like he's entering in his own. He's training with good people at Tiger Muay Thai, the Hickman brothers, who come from collegiate level Division I programs. They're over there coaching guys. And he's got his special team at Dubai. You want to talk about Dubai, whether it's the medical side, getting their fighters in good shape, or the fact that Tai Tuivasa has actually been spending his last multiple training camps in Dubai with legit heavyweight kickboxers. And that was a big thing. Guys like Bazooka Joe Valtellini shouting to me in the masses that, hey, Tai is training with some really good kickboxers. That's going to pay him some dividends. And I listened to it the last two fights, and he cashed those last two fights against Sakai and Derek Lewis. Does it mean he's going to cash here? No. But not only does he have the knockout chance, I'm being long-winded here. I'm sorry. There's not a lot of dogs.
Dan, this is gold. You keep going. You keep going.
Oddly enough, this is the most confident dog I have. But, like, I dare say he could even maybe get himself into winning a decision, which sounds batshit crazy. But you think about it this way. Playing safe, and if Gane doesn't get knocked out, but he goes the distance, playing it air quote-unquote safe, unless he's able to both step up his wrestling and submission grappling level, and not just 2 levels, a 3rd level, his cardio to sustain that, he's going to have to be taking this guy to a decision, right? Or opening himself up for a finish on the feet to get finished himself. So all signs point to a Gane decision. But again, with impact being the biggest criteria, you're telling me that Tai Tuivasa gets outpointed for 90% of the round, but is able to debase him with a leg kick while he's on one leg, crack him with a left hook. Doesn't even have to finish him. He just has to rock him at that point, get him on skates. And what's the judge going to, is the judge going to weigh more heavily of that, or the accumulative pot shots that really aren't doing too much? That's going to be the thing. I do think that Tai Tuivasa's nose is going to probably get bust up from the jab. But outside of that, I feel like the damaging moments are going to be coming from Tai Tuivasa. And last but not leastly, Ciryl Gane has a habit from his Muay Thai days of using the clinch to reset. So even if he's not pushing this heavy grappling game, or even if he's just kind of playing tourist in the grappling game that he sometimes does, he's always using the clinch as a touching point, all the way in, all the way out. Going for a takedown, coming back to reset to the clinch before he can push all the way out. What's the connecting piece in all these different scenarios? No matter which way he's going, it is the clinch. Whereas Tai Tuivasa has been good since the beginning of since he stepped on the UFC. Elbows in the clinch. That's right, Clint. Where has he quietly sparked off the majority of his finishes in the UFC? In the clinch. Not just furthermore in the clinch, where in the cage, against the fence. Gane can pressure against a guy like a Volkov, which is the one time I've only picked against Gane, by the way, which was Volkov. And Volkov can be real Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde. In hindsight, Volkov was going through a camp change. He also, again, doesn't show up the best all the time. And Gane, to his credit, showed up smart. So I'm not trying to devalue it. But again, that was a guy who wanted to play the same game. When he goes against power punchers, Gane will play off his back foot. And that is Tai Tuivasa's kill zone. So I don't know, man. I see multiple pathways to victory, especially if you're going to let him hang around for 25 minutes. You're going to post this much of a number. I could easily do the safe face. I'm going to pick the favorite and play the dog. Like, fuck you, man. I'm picking the dog, and I'm going to play the dog. I don't know how much. I may just kick for coverage on the money line, but I'm going with Tai Tuivasa here. I'm surprised myself, folks. I fully came in expecting to pick Gane and moving on. But I see way too much that I can't not grab here.
Evan absolutely nailed it. And Dan, thank you very much for that breakdown, man. That was solid gold from you on that. And I believe I may have gone from Ailin favorite, but the line is too wide to why wouldn't I bet the underdog at this number? Like, that's the kind of pull you've got with that kind of a breakdown. Way too many points that just make far too much sense. I was never going to parlay Gane. I honestly didn't think I was going to have a bet on the main event whatsoever for this fight, because I just didn't really see the point in playing much of anything. But after that kind of a breakdown, how can I not look at this underdog at plus 425 and higher? Like, that's a solid number. And Tuivasa legitimately has been showing up and proving people wrong and making adjustments. And man, I can't argue with a damn thing you just said. Especially the big point was the counter to my wrestling argument here on the idea that he potentially could slow himself down, gas himself out, and Tuivasa's ability to counter and work back to his feet, things of that nature. That's a massive, a relief off of my shoulders, that it's like, okay, you know what? Like, if he's not going to do that, then maybe we do get more of a striking match. And those leg kicks, that was a big part of the fight that I'm glad you mentioned. I was kind of saving that from, like, I do my initial little breakdown, I kick it to the guest, and then I keep one or two little nuggets in the pocket for myself. I was going to circle back around to talk about the leg kicks. I'm so happy you spotlighted that. I thought that was a thing that Gane might slow down by. If Tuivasa comes out and wants to trade leg kicks with him, that speed, that athleticism, the movement of Gane, you could see that go away with the hard leg kicking. You could see that slow him down a bit. And if he gets slowed down, he could be there for a big bomb from someone like Tuivasa. And like you mentioned, even if he doesn't get knocked out, that's where those big power shots can swing rounds that are otherwise close. I like it, Dan. I like it. At least a half unit is going to be going on Tuivasa if I don't talk myself into a full unit bet here at this point, because I love the breakdown. Everything grounded in technique and logic and done underneath a microscope. Fantastic work on that breakdown, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks, man. And just last thing, I'm probably falling into the more like 3/4 unit. And then do I want to maybe take that quarter unit, 3/4 units on the money line kick for coverage? Do I want to take the quarter unit and get cheeky if I think the decision is actually in play? Or do I play, and still up the odds with an inside the distance around plus 500 to 600? Maybe I do that, or I just stay at, a 3/4 unit to a unit play, on the money line and kick for on the kick for coverage. The last thing I'll note is that obviously Gane has a cardio advantage and movement advantage. We've seen him move the same way in round 5 and round 1 outside of the Ngannou fight. You do have to say that, but I will say, and the commentators bring up that point, where fighters where it would make sense for Gane to push the pace, he doesn't necessarily do that. So even in the striking realm, and that's his area, that's where he's comfortable, and he still doesn't push a pace there. So, I mean, he's really going to have to turn a corner to be able to push a pace in a completely different realm. And if he's not pushing the pace, that means he better be clearly outpointing his guy because he's not tiring him out and he's not opening himself up to get a finish or get finished, right? So again, Gane could walk himself on a real funny tightrope here.
It's true. It's true. Wow. All right, Dan, I love it, man. We can't do anything better than that to end this breakdown for you folks. 2.5 solid hours of gambling talk here. Welcome back, UFC. Let's go. I want to make some money this weekend, folks. I wish you all the best of luck on your degenerate gambling this week. Dan, you poured your heart and soul into this show, and we appreciate your time. Now is your time. Let the people know where they can support you, what you've got coming down the line. The floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, I appreciate it. First, just make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. If you want more of me, you can find me at Daniel Tom MMA. Otherwise, it's the name tag at Dan Tom MMA on Twitter is where I'm most active. You can find me on other social platforms, but I'm so not active there. Your best shots on Twitter, and that's where I post everything. So we'll keep it simple. We'll just plug the YouTube and the Twitter. And Clint, thanks for having me on, man. There's only one person that I'll do a Monday show for, and because you know me, I'm literally OCD with my prep, so like it's hard for me to do it. But because it's you, I will do it. And guys, it's not just me being OCD. It's really tough to do this over and over like Clinton does on a Monday to have takes for you guys and content and entertainment and all the boxes that this guy checks. So please hook him up with the follows, the likes, the subscriptions. This guy deserves it.
I appreciate you so much, Dan. The kind words don't go unnoticed, man. And right back at you, dude. You're one of my favorite people in this industry. So I love doing shows with you, and I don't have you on as often as I'd like because I know Mondays are really tough for you to get to.
This is great. No, I appreciate you, bro. I got to get you on my show. Top 5 breakdown or a recap. You pick. You're coming on.
Hey, anytime, man. I will absolutely jump on. I love doing fight talks with you, man. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to the sponsors, Pub Sports Radio, Superbook Sports. Everybody go check out Spectation Sports. They're doing the cool regional scene stuff. Guys, have a week. Get out there, kick some ass. We got college football back. We got the NFL starting up right around the corner. Gambling contests galore here on Pub Sports Radio. We can fill our pockets and load up some extra bullets to fire on the UFC on Saturday. I want to absolutely destroy these next couple of cards. I've got 4 months. I got 4 months to turn this damn boat around, and then I'm going to be rowing down like the guys you see in France with the ladies on the boats. Oh, I'm going to be doing the big row. That's going to be me and my boat. I'm getting myself to glory and victory before the end of 2022, baby. I'm pumped up. Let's have at it. Dana White Contender Series tomorrow. Make sure you check out our guy, Liam Picks Fights. He's doing his full card breakdown. I believe starting in like a half hour or something. He'll be going live over there with, I think, Gordo and who else is he having on? Narco Cop, I think, is going to be there. Check those guys out. They kick some serious ass. I'm going to be tuning in myself. Have a wonderful week, everybody. I wanted to give you a classic Clint sermon to go ahead and end the podcast and give you some good positive vibes to go out on, but I'm too damn excited. There's too much good stuff going on. I'm just going to tell you about everything that you should do and just be positive and be wonderful and be nice to each other and smile and have fun gambling. Bankroll management is important. Gamble safely and responsibly. Let's kick some ass. We'll see you guys later on in the week. Let's roll. I did it again. Damn it. I don't know why I'm doing that lately. That's the second show in a row. Instead of ending the show, I am leaving the channel. What the hell is wrong with me? And I am sorry. Ending the